Amateurs talk shit, professionals talk shop. This is the first episode of the Talk Shop podcast. I came up with the expression amateurs talk shit, professionals talk shop as a deviation from the original expression amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. And that's more or less what the show is actually really about, is logistics. The logistics of what it takes to be a creative professional. The goal of this podcast is to have conversations with creative professionals and learn about how they do what they do. I don't know that I could have picked a better guest than the one I have today. His name's Taylor Leach, but he goes by White T. And I could go on about the prerequisites that he has, and we will talk about that in the podcast. But I want to talk about him on a more of a personal level, because after this podcast, we talked so much, way more than we ever would have in this podcast. And I almost wish we had recorded it, but a lot of it was so personal to me that I never would have been able to put it in anyway. After the recording of this podcast, T has essentially become almost like a mentor for me, giving me guidance and directions on dealing with a few little situations that I've had recently. And I could tell you from personal experience that his guidance does get results. With every concern or issue that I've come to him with, I've always had this idea of I want to do this or I want to do that. And every single time he has proposed a third and better option. I strongly recommend that you take everything this man has to say very seriously, because this is not theoretical. He is talking from real world experience. So without further ado, please enjoy the first episode of the Talk Shop podcast. All right, man.
So we're live right now.
Yeah, we are live. Okay. I'm going to cut in an intro, and we're also going to cut something in afterwards.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So first things first, we'll start with this. Who are you, and what do you do?
Yes, that's a loaded question. So government name, Taylor Leach. A lot of people know me as White T, but a lot of people call me T. So whatever you prefer. Whatever you want to go with, right? But
to me, you are T.
T. Okay, cool. So we'll rock with T. Really, man, don't want to sound like a jack of all trades, but I'm a marketing management and consulting specialist. I have my own business that I've been doing now for 4 years. But in terms of that type of work, now I've been involved with that for about 16 years. So I started when I was 18 from a professional standpoint, starting a career. And now I'm doing it on my own for the last 4 years. So rocking and rolling with that, strong emphasis on media production, but really marketing is my area of expertise.
Yeah. Now, my understanding, though, if I remember you explaining, is that you started marketing and then you picked up a camera to add into your market. Is that correct?
Kind of. Like, if we go back, my mom was a professional photographer when I was growing up. So when I was 10 is really when I started messing with a camera. I just would go assist her on shoots. You know, I was getting paid like $20 to go help her for like an hour or two, not realizing I was getting ripped off, by my mom. But so I was really just assisting her, and I learned a lot. I mean, back in the day, she's using like a Canon T5i Rebel. I'm holding a light meter. I'm like 10 years old, squeaky voice, just telling her what the light meter says, holding reflectors and, that sort of thing. And then even started using Photoshop, 5.0 limited edition.
5.0, baby.
What you know about that limited edition?
Yeah, OG.
Yeah,
back when you had to steal them, when you could steal them.
We had a legit copy of Photoshop 5.0, but then once the upgrades started happening, I kind of went on my own and started downloading stuff, and parents had no clue, but probably could have had the FBI show up like any given day with the amount of software that I had,
Yeah, actually, let's do. This will probably be the first pointer to give away for whatever is to give you an idea of how little a shit Adobe gives, because they sell software. They don't sell physical merchandise.
Right.
If you want to get a discount from Adobe, all you have to do is cancel the membership.
Yeah.
And they'll give you a bunch of options as to why do you want to cancel. And one of them will be like, I can't afford it. And they'll just go, how about half off? And then you just take it. Every year I do this.
Yeah.
Every year
Same.
I get half off because I say I can't afford it.
But I don't actually cancel. I just go to their live chat. And I just tell them I'm about to cancel. I'm thinking about it. It's getting a little expensive,
Yeah.
It's like, at the end of the day, what are your other options, right? But they're like, oh, it's okay. Well, what about this price instead? And I'm like, it still seems a little high, And they're like, okay, well, we could go down to here. And
what have you gotten?
I think the lowest I got them down to was $29 a month.
Okay, that's what I usually get. Yeah, they usually give me half off or whatever.
But you just kind of got to resist a little bit. And they're like, we got you. At the end of the day, they're still making money. And back in the day, though, like 5.0, and all those before Creative Cloud became a thing, I'm literally, I think they were charging like $500-600 for the brand new
per software for Gen Z.
Yes.
You had to pay $600 for Photoshop, $2,000 for After Effects.
Yeah, exactly. But then the upgrades, if you already owned it, then the upgrades were a little cheaper. I think like $200 or $300 or something like that. But still, you were coming out of pocket every time.
And the upgrades were every like 3 or 4 years,
right?
Versus now, and this isn't always a great thing, but now the upgrades happen all the time,
right? Well, sometimes without you really even realizing,
which is annoying. That
right?
can be, and it'll reset your system,
or sometimes compatibility issues that you weren't expecting because it's doing like those auto updates. You know? So, but yeah, man. So been playing around with photography, Photoshop for a really long time. I guess you could put that at 24 years, 34 now. And it's just kind of second nature, really that was my start. I didn't get into video or anything like that until a bit later. But that was kind of the origination story of that. I mean, fun fact, I still use my mom's kind of like my go-to lens. A lot of like the comedy photos that I shoot that you've seen are my mom's old 20-something-year-old 75 to 300 Canon lens. I mean, with the craziest scratches on it, but getting some nice character. We call it character,
Yeah, it's interesting how the vintage stuff, I mean, aesthetic is aesthetic.
Right.
Well, they worked their asses off to make things look good back then. And I would still argue that the cameras and the lenses are better, but those people back then, it's not like they didn't know what they were doing. They worked their asses off to make things look good, and it did.
Well,
it worked.
Even to that point, like I got that lens from her. She gave me her old camera bag, had her old, Mamiya medium format 645 in there, which was a crazy.
You have
expensive.
a medium format?
I have her original Mamiya 645
That's what's up, bro.
And her Mamiya lenses. That camera back in the day, I want to say it was like a $10,000 medium format camera.
Maybe more.
It also had this is before digital really became a thing, but it had a digital back that you could put onto that camera. That backing, I want to say when it came out, was like 15 or 20 grand to just get that backing.
Yeah.
And it was super low megapixel quality. We didn't have that, but it was an option back then. It also had this really cool feature where, let's say you're at a shoot, right? And you wanted to kind of get an idea for what the image was going to look like, but you can't develop the film on the spot. It had a Polaroid back that you could attach to it just to get a little preview of what you were looking at. And so you take it and it would shoot it out.
Your mom did this?
My mom, yeah.
That's crazy.
So she had that Polaroid backing, but
who did she shoot for?
She was more portrait, driven. She did a lot of family portraits, senior portraits.
She was doing all of this for family portraits?
Oh, yeah.
So she was working with like a $15,000-$20,000 camera for family portraits.
I mean, setup-wise, when it was all said and done, she probably had the camera alone was 10. She probably had a good 12 to 15 into it. Just, back then, filters were real big. I remember her going and buying, lens filters and stuff like that. But lighting, studio, equipment. We had like a little studio set up we had a formal dining room, back in the day, which was what the point of that was. I have no clue in houses, but we just converted it into a photo studio for her. So she would go on location and then she'd bring people there. And she, like I said, mostly portrait.
Do you have any idea how much she was charging for these portraits?
Man, I want to say back in the day. And I remember that always being a thing too, because, a lot of times, especially then, you're doing family portraits. That's a lot of word of mouth, like friends of, the family and that sort of thing. The big thing back then, I remember, and I don't remember the price, but she had a sitting fee. You remember that term, sitting fee?
No, I do not.
So like she had a sitting fee, and that was a very standard thing for photographers at the time, where that's just like my fee to show up.
Okay,
right?
yeah, like a deposit.
But that's what it
was
called back then, right?
Yeah.
And then packages a lot of times based on that, especially with families and like she's doing family Christmas portraits for cards to go out during Christmas time. She got into a little bit of like celebrity work. She got to work with pretty legendary country singer Charlie Pride.
Okay.
Back then, and then she also did some cool stuff, mostly in kind of like the church world, ministry world, but the author photo on the back of a book, right?
Yeah.
She was taking that for like some preachers and ministers that were putting out these books in Barnes and Nobles and stuff like that. Pricing wise, I can't remember, but I always remember that being a topic where it's tough to determine pricing and is this too much? Is this too little? And, not wanting to feel like you're taking advantage of people and balancing that out with also your craft and what your actual value is, right?
Yeah.
And understanding your value, so, but that's really where I got a lot of my influence and learned a lot about just photography, framing and like the basics, right?
Yeah.
And then just the experience of being around it and watching it my whole life. And that really kind of kicked off, I guess, the interest a little bit, but I didn't start doing it for money really until I was about 18. So yeah, man, it's kind of cool. Just the idea. I don't know if you pointed it out to me when we first met, but the idea, that she was doing that, and like now I'm doing that. I'm even using some of her same gear, from back in the day. But I guess what I started off with, she gave me that old camera bag recently, and it had that.
Is she still? She's not retired or anything.
No, no. She now works for Apple, and completely different. She's worked at the retail store level. She's a specialist over there. She actually works.
That's funny. I worked at the Apple Store for like 10 years.
Oh, really? She's in the business.
She's
department.
a business. Okay, yeah,
business associate. And so she's able to take a lot of that insight from back then.
What happened? Why did she transition out?
Life, man. Trying to run a business and raise kids, and
does she still want to do photography, or is she just tired of it?
I talked to her recently about that, and she seems I feel like she would enjoy it more from a hobby perspective, but I feel like she's kind of moved on from that in a sense. But she's always been creative. She was always the one doing just creative stuff like scrapbooking. And
is it what she wanted to do, was photography?
Oh yeah, she loved it.
So that's that's such an interesting thing, is that now that I've reached a point where I'm almost like double time, triple time, like I'm not full time,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like I'm nonstop doing this. I do feel the love of it sort of slipping a little. Not really. I mean, I do. I always end up going the extra mile because of the love of it. I don't. It's none of it's bad. But
is it the love of the work, or is the love of the artistry component what's fading? Is it like because it's more
the love
work and business that's causing it to fade, but you still love the artistry of it, or like what is that for you?
So here's what I think for me. What's interesting is just looking at other photographers or whoever, videographers, that type of thing, and seeing them. And when you're working with them, they oftentimes will have this very jaded, especially video.
Right.
Photographers typically, for whatever reason, have a little bit more energy, but video people are always just like, they look like they just got out of the trenches or something like that.
Well, dude, think about it.
It's way harder.
It's way hard.
It's way harder.
Not to say from a skill set standpoint, because you're applying a lot
from
of the
a skill set as well.
Well, it is, but
both.
you're applying a lot of the same principles, right? But if I'm just shooting photo, I already know in my head that I'm a lot more relaxed and comfortable because I'm thinking about post-production. How much time am I going to have involved in post?
Right.
Not even just
But also, you don't even
itself.
have to tell a story per se. Versus with video,
well, true.
You do need some degree. Otherwise,
true.
If people watch even 60 seconds of your video, this is what I've realized more and more, is that if there's no story in your video, or even a sense of story, a sense of tension and resolve, if it's one note for 60 seconds,
oh yeah,
no one's going to watch the full 60 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, if it's even boring for the first 10, 15 at this point, just with social media, Instagram, TikTok culture, it's kind of, you have to capture people right away, unless they're already interested in you and your work, or what the work, the content of the work, who's in it, the subject matter. If you don't get them right away now, man, I mean, you could have the dopest production, and people are tuning out.
I've taken like a second off or whatever off of a video, posted, and then seen it get better. But going back to sorry, I'm just gonna scooch this because this is supposed to be lighting.
Of course,
you going back to the like emotional component, I find this sort of interesting where you see some creatives or whatever, and they feel jaded, and it's an interesting thing where, your mother had the exact opposite trajectory as me. I was at the Apple Store for 10 years and I'm like, I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
And she was doing photography for X amount of years and goes, I gotta change it up,
Yeah. I think for her, it was probably, at the time, my parents, they got divorced when I was around 18. So she now goes into being kind of single mom mode, right?
Okay.
I was 18-ish, somewhere around there, but I have a younger brother and sister. They're still in school. At that point, I dipped out and was doing my own thing. I started kind of going down that journey of moving out and going down that path. So I think part of it was kind of like, okay, need to generate more money, but then also to grow a business, and really do it correct. You're doing it out here in Austin right now. How much time, energy, and effort? It's like 24/7.
I literally cannot imagine doing this with kids.
You have to. for me, with my own business, I'm sitting there all the time. Even when I'm trying to just relax and enjoy myself, it's tough to not be thinking.
You're always on. It's crazy.
Exactly.
And I'm not even there yet. I'm barely, I'm just now starting to make enough money that I can recover from the debt that I've taken on to be here. And I'm like, this has been the most difficult thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
This is by far the most difficult. And just like I said before we even started rolling, I always tell people, if you're going to do this, don't do what I did, which is move to a new place and switch industries.
Man.
Do one or the other. Either move or switch, but don't do both at the same time.
Man, I call that setting yourself up for success. It's a lot, man. When you jump ship from one thing to another, if you don't have somewhat of a smooth transition plan laid out, and because I know people who dip out from their job to go pursue something else, right? And they have the idea, they love the idea of what they want to go do, and it sounds great and all that, but that transitional moment, if you don't have your ducks lined up and you're just kind of freestyling it and free balling like out the gate with it and just kind of crossing your fingers and it's going to work out. Sure, I believe it can work for those people. Yeah, but that's just not me, man. I don't find comfort in that. I love expectations, whether you're setting them for other people or setting them for yourself, is kind of a big thing. And I don't want to set myself up to not be able to meet that expectation, that I want to achieve, right, and that I want for myself. So for me, when I made the jump, man, from the 9 to 5,
what was your 9 to 5?
I was with a fashion brand at the time.
What was it called?
It's called Yums. YUMS, and it was a headwear kind of streetwear brand based out of Dallas, and we ended up getting global distribution.
Hell yeah!
It was great time, a lot of fun, learned a lot, and I was running the marketing for the company, and kind of anything that fell under that umbrella, from digital to event activation to the media production. We brought it all in house, and it was a great learning opportunity. But when you jump ship from a situation like that, again, man, and everyone's different, right? I mean, I'm just speaking for myself and my perspective, but when I try to give advice to people, I'm like, hey, get a game plan together. It is going to be so much more enjoyable. And I think a lot of people get into that transitional moment without the game plan, and they never make it through the transition because of how difficult that moment is for them, right? Because they didn't have anything planned out. They didn't have the next thing kind of going already, and allowing them to, it's tough. And when you go on your own, man, you're going into the unknown, right? There is you are the end all be all for your situation, right?
Yes.
So if you're kind of just hoping it's going to work out and you're not really on it, and you're also not necessarily prepared from a experience standpoint, right? If you don't have the experience to even know how to handle a moment like that, or try to, I guess it's hard to have the experience for that moment if you've never had that reference point, right? But from a business perspective and just overall experience, you really have to ask yourself, like, can I really do this?
Yes.
And it's not just like a feel good thing, like, hey, positive affirmations, look in the mirror,
right,
like, I got this. It's real work.
Yeah. Actually, can we just?
Yeah, of course.
There's something that's nagging me. I'm wondering what codec I used here.
You're gonna be thinking about that the whole time, right?
Yeah, but
how are we doing? We doing all right?
We're doing great.
Cool.
In fact, this is actually exactly like where I want to be.
Cut me off at any point if I'm just like going too much.
No, this is exactly it. So, I mean, just to let you know what the back of my plan is, I want to go through your journey, and then we're going to pick it apart, basically.
Cool.
But one thing, so note to myself, cut out all that part. This is an important thing for people to realize, is this concept of visualizing your dream is real, but it's not what you think.
Right.
People have this idea of visualize success and it will happen.
Yeah.
You are not understanding, most likely you are not understanding what the term visualize means. It doesn't mean post a photo on your refrigerator. It means physically visualize step by step what's it going to take. Right. I want to be a photographer for who or
Sure.
whatever. I want to be a filmmaker. I want to be All right, reverse engineer that.
Yes.
Who do I speak to? What skills do I need? What does my portfolio need to look like to get to this person, to get to this level, that type of thing? It doesn't mean some fluffy thing. It means sit down, close your eyes, and really try and visualize the mechanics of what it's going to take to get you from A to B.
Yeah, man. The reverse engineering thing you said, that's usually how I describe it to people is you can't really get to the goal, right? If you don't know what it is, if you haven't defined the end step, right? You kind of have to do that first, right? If you don't define the end step first, the end goal first, you're just kind of throwing darts, in the wind. And where it lands, it lands. But if you have that end goal, then you can literally work backwards from there. Like, okay, so if this is the last step I need to get to, what would be the step before that happens, right? And then what would be the step before that happens till you get to where you're standing, the current step you're standing on right now, right? And beyond that, right, the reverse engineering, and it kind of plays into that, but you also have to, beyond the visualizing and the, speaking it into existence and all that, what about the action component, right? You can't just sit there and say these positive things and hope they happen. You actually have to take the action steps, the actionable items that are going to get you there. I forget who said it one time, but they were kind of, I think it was a comedian kind of making fun of the idea of like, people are all into like the power of the universe. And like, if I say positive affirmations, it's like, you can say it all day long while you're sitting on your couch eating potato chips, right? But like, if you're just sitting on your couch saying it and not getting off that couch and taking action to work towards that, you don't have to hit the bullseye, right? Like getting really close to the bullseye, there's a good chance you still win that game, right? Because those are really valuable points all around it as well too.
Yeah.
Right. So, and it's not magic at that point, right? It's like, it's not some magical thing that just happened. It is you laid out the plan and then you executed the plan. And the hard part is executing it. Some people never even get to that step because they can't reverse engineer it or they can't define the end goal that they're even going after.
Yeah.
So yeah, perfect way to say it, man. The reverse engineering concept, highly recommend it.
Yeah, absolutely. So just going back a little bit. So you leave the house when 18. Did you go to college or not?
Man, so I actually was on a baseball scholarship playing at a junior college out in West Texas. Super creative name, Western Texas College.
Okay. They probably asked ChatGPT to name that.
Man, if we had that back then, it would have been way better.
Yeah.
We were the Western Texas College Westerners. That was our mascot.
Okay.
The Westerners.
All right.
And if you don't know, that's a cowboy.
Yes.
Apparently. So I'm out there playing baseball. Baseball was my whole life. If you ever asked me up until the day I stopped playing, what are you going to do when you grow up? Professional baseball, without a doubt, was my answer. So, if you kind of back to, talking about when I first started working with my mom, I'm assisting her at 10 years old. Come 12 years old, I actually started doing website and graphic design.
Okay.
And I was...
You said around 12?
Around 12, yeah.
Okay.
So I start using Photoshop at 10, right, with my mom, and I just think it's a photo thing. Then online, I start kind of surfing. I find these web forums that I see people are using Photoshop to make websites.
Yeah.
And design them. So I kind of started getting into that. And, I've kind of always been, I guess maybe self-proclaimed. I'm not sure what other people would say, but I think a little bit of a hustler. And I wanted to make my own money. I didn't want to ask my parents for money. I just wanted to like be able to self-sustain. Even at a young age, I just like felt that. And so I started reaching out to companies like through email. I had my own, website and domain. I think when I was 11, I think it was called Hybrid Media is like the name that I came up with. My first one was actually called Spider Designs.
Okay.
And I used the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man had just come out.
Nice.
I found this sick Spider-Man image and I was like, that's me. That's my brand right there. And so eventually like it upgraded, but I started reaching out to brands through email because I knew that, and we didn't have social media. We didn't have any of that at that point. But I just knew if I try to call them, I've got a squeaky little kid voice. There's no way I could even get work to do it. So, but I could sound old enough if I wasn't, using email and typing. Yeah. You couldn't tell my age. Yeah. I thought, well, it worked enough to where
until they saw Captain Poopy Pants 523 at AOL.net.
I had Taylor at hybridmedia.com.
Great.
I had a business card made.
Damn, bro.
I stopped.
You were a young king.
Oh yeah.
You had your own website.
Yeah, own website.
How old are you?
Now?
Yeah.
34.
34. So this would have been right cutting edge of the internet.
Oh yeah. This is the very beginning of like any of that stuff even being an option. And so I started getting a little bit of business. I started doing some logos and some website. I did a website. I'm literally 12 years old doing a website for like a fancy French restaurant in New York. You know, I'm doing a charity out of Australia, you know, and I mean, a couple times, man, like I pulled like 2 G's like off of a website. So I'm like the only kid, 12 years old with my own debit card, my own bank account. All my other friends, like they're asking their parents for money. I'm also like mowing yards on the weekends at the same time. I was just trying to like stack it up. But that was really what kicked off, I feel like, the kind of creative lane. It wasn't just photography. It was kind of all of it, right? And I love doing all that. So kind of fun fact, my mom, professional photographer at the time, my dad is a computer programmer at the time. So it's kind of this computers, photography, media, it's all kind of around me. But I kind of had to figure out how to do it on my own.
Well, graphic design is interesting in that it is, in the sense that up until maybe you add AI, in a weird way, it is the ultimate medium in that it is on and in, it can be involved in everything.
Right.
It can be print. It does not need electricity.
Right.
You can do motion graphics. It is an interesting, it's basically like a permanent art form, just like paintings and whatnot. But the difference is you can't just slap a painting on anything versus you can slap a sticker on anything. And that it's sort of interesting how it is sort of like all permanent art forms led to graphic design.
Well, if you think about it, a lot of the same principles apply across all the mediums. Like whether we're talking graphic design, photography, we're talking videography, film, whatever, composition applies in all those.
Exactly.
Right? Rule of thirds applies in all those. Contrast, color theory applies in all those.
Gradients.
You know, so I don't say it's all the same. They're very different applications, but you're using the same parts of your brain and kind of some of the same thought processes across all of them. So to me, you know, I don't ever want to come across as like a jack of all trades, because I think that's, you know, you kind of come across those.
The term
people.
jack of all trades, I feel like, is the wrong. Well, so here's the thing. We should probably take a second to talk about this. Number one is the original expression is jack of all trades, master of none, and yet still better than master of one.
Right.
That's the original expression.
Right.
There's so many expressions that somehow got completely inverted.
Right.
The second thing is, the term jack of all trades or whatever, it's like, if you want to call yourself that, whatever, but there's like, you can call yourself a polymath, you can call yourself a Renaissance, you know, whatever. Because the truth of the matter is, it's like, that's real. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci literally was one of the greatest painters and sculptors of all time. He also is the father of anatomy, of modern anatomy and biology. He invented the helicopter. He invented scissors.
Right.
He invented, you know what I mean? Like, this is a real thing. And I feel like, I'll be honest, as somebody who is a pretty hardcore polymath, that I don't even like to share all the stuff I do.
Polymath? I don't think I've heard that term.
Polymath it's more or less the same thing. Jack of all trades just has a what's the phrase? It just has like a sort of, I don't know, people don't like that phrase. I mean, it's somehow.
Well, you know, for me, the reason I say I don't want to come across that way is you can be really good at many things, right? I do believe that, but you know, you come across people that, hey, I do this, I also do this, I also do this, and I do that. And, you know, one thing that
people don't like that for some reason.
Well, I think it's because it's not realistic. I
largely disagree.
Okay.
I have run into the same problem. What I just do is I don't share.
Sure.
I no longer share everything I do. Most people have like a limited window until like I've realized if they're cool or how judgy they are or whatever the hell. But the truth of the matter is this idea of it being realistic. So for example, let's say I want to do stand-up, that most people will look at you and say, look, if you want to be the best, you know, you got to do this nonstop. Well, guess what?
Right.
Only like one person can be the best.
Right.
You're going to do this your whole life or whatever the hell, and you're still not going to be the best. That's statistic. Spectrum, So this idea of it's like, here, like they actually have the unreasonable expectation of it's like, oh, I need to be the best, or no, you just need to be good.
Right. So I think more what I'm saying is I've come across people who they want to be portrayed as a jack of all trades. Like they want you to believe that they're good at all those things. And so what I would correlate it to is like one of my favorite kind of business analogies is the idea of a food truck. Okay. Right. And like we could apply this to business, right? Or we could apply this to like skill sets with what we're talking about, right? So I think you can have a ton of skill sets. I mean, one of the coolest quotes I ever heard from it was a Navy SEAL on a podcast. He said, "I am an expert at becoming an expert." So he's like, if I have a mission tomorrow, I find out today that tomorrow I got to go to this country and there's this helicopter that I got to fly that I've never flown before. And my commanding officers send me the helicopter manual. You better believe that by the time I get to that helicopter, I am going to know exactly how to fly that helicopter because I'm an expert at becoming an expert. And that always stuck with me. So to your point, I think what you're talking about is people try to put people in a box. It's almost like, you always hear it with Kanye.
We are used to seeing the idiot that says, I do all of these things, and they're not good at any of them.
Right. But like going back to the food truck kind of analogy, with a food truck, and I always apply this with business when I'm consulting with, brands from more of like a marketing perspective or, that sort of thing. A food truck, you have and what I'm going to compare this to is like, let's compare it to like a cheesecake factory, like a big restaurant, right? With a food truck, you've got maybe like 10 feet of space to work, right?
Yeah.
Means you have limited amount of space, not just for people to be in that food truck to facilitate the food being made, but you also have limited amount of space for your ingredients, for the cooking surfaces, for the tools that you can use at your disposal, right? So they're forced into being really good at one thing. Right. So think about the idea, like maybe it's a French fry.
So I think that's the flaw already. The flaw is that most people don't end up being really good. Most people go into specializing, thinking that, because I'm specializing, I will be good. But by definition, the word good means only a few people can be like you're in the top 20% or whatever. Right. Most people, even who specialize, still don't end up being good at that thing.
Right. So like, let's take the business version of the analogy. Let's say you want to make a couple different products, whatever category of business you're in. You want to offer several different products to your customer.
Sure.
But let's say you're just starting out with the business, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people will want to have that product offering as quickly as possible, right?
Right.
But I don't think it's a smart approach or a good approach to try to do all of them at one time. I think your best bet is to get really good at that first product, right? That first product, master that first product so that I have a viable product that I can sell. And before I move on to the next product, now we have this product standing on its own, right?
My counter to that would be that is the best way of getting good at something fast. But I would call that the difference between linear development and spiral development. In other words, linear development is something exactly like you said. You focus on one thing for a long time. Maybe in 5 to 10 years, you can get really good at it. Spiral development would be more like Leonardo da Vinci. He literally did not he did not do most of the things that he's known for until he was like in his 60s or like around 70. Like Mona Lisa, didn't paint that until he was 70. And what he did was he touched this up, starts working on anatomy, starts working on physics, starts working on whatever. And the truth of the matter is, he did end up being basically one of the best of all time at all of these different things. But it did take a while, right?
For sure.
So in one way, the answer is yes. If you want to, I think the best way of thinking about it is actually to mimic fitness, which is that if you want to be the best power lifter in the world, you got to focus only on powerlifting. If you want to do that in a short period of time,
you could be the best bicep guy, or you could have the full body.
Sure.
Right?
So the next thing is that almost just like anybody else, you will hit a plateau.
Yeah.
Because your body eventually you will hit a series. Your body's going to go, okay, there's other skill sets essentially that we need. There's other parts of the body that need to develop before you move on. Yeah. And that's sort of the thing about specializing is that you will eventually hit a wall or a plateau where you needed those other skills, be it whatever they are, in order to move on to the next phase.
So how much though do you think that, based on like kind of that version of it, how much of that is trying to find really what you want to do? Because I think that's a cool approach from, maybe I'm not quite sure where I want to anchor myself and try to excel or go to. So I want to try all these different things out, and by trying them all kind of at the same time or in the same moment, it allows me to get the experience and the reference points that I don't have yet to even know anything about it, right? To then go, oh, cool, I really love photography more than I love videography. Or I'm more the graphics person, maybe like from a passion perspective, enjoyment standpoint, and where you actually excel with your skill set. Like I almost kind of think about it like, to your point, when I was in Little League baseball, right? When you're in Little League, you don't know what you're good at yet. And so it's kind of at least when I was playing, it was a rule. Every player played every position.
Yes.
So 1 inning, I'm at first base. The next inning, I'm in the outfield. The next inning, I'm a catcher, And kind of the point for that was we don't really know, A, what you're going to even like doing in this game, but B, we also, if you're the coach, right, and you're putting the team together, we also don't really know what you're good at yet.
Right.
You might be the best pitcher on the team, and you might be terrible at hitting.
Yeah.
Well, we can't really figure that out until we try you out in both of those scenarios, right? And to get that reference point. So I don't know. I think it depends kind of what we're talking about. I think they're both correct. I think it's that it depends on the person and how
100%.
But I think it depends on how comfortable they are and confident they are and what reference points they already have when they're getting into it. So I could see the approach of mastering the one thing or the one product and then moving on to the next. This is still operating and doing its thing. It's like, so the food truck, right? We got the best taco food truck.
Sure.
Well, now we want to open up another food truck, or maybe our end goal is to open up a brick and mortar, right?
Yeah.
But we want to master it in this small space and kill it. Well, now that's doing its thing. Maybe you open food truck number 2. Maybe it's another taco truck, or maybe it's the, I don't know, some French fry truck doing, you're doing one product, but then you've got 3 or 4 or 5 different versions of the French fries, right? But so I think it kind of depends on the person in the scenario.
I agree, but I do think there's a little bit of a problem, which is this. So, for example, a big part of the reason, the influence for this is that it comes from a quote from Einstein in which he talks about how if you want to be the best at something, find a bunch of other things that you suck at, because all of the things that he was known for being bad at, like violin, cooking, and all that, dancing, he did those things to intentionally struggle to make him better at physics. The reason being is that he figured out that, and this is like a huge part of my life, is to figure out something that you need to always be in some kind of struggle mode. Like that, becoming an expert, going back to what you said, becoming an expert,
Right.
That's like a skill set. That is a muscle in your brain. And he figured out that he needed that. If he wanted to stay the best at being a specialist in physics, he needed to keep that muscle and keep the fluidity in other parts of his brain.
You're in constant challenge, right? So like that constant challenge, and that's kind of the thing. Like obviously the Navy SEAL said that, right?
Sure.
Not everybody's cut out to be a Navy SEAL, right? There's levels to it, right? And that constant challenge, for some people, that's a really good thing, right? And they excel in that moment. You kind of look at like a guy like Elon Musk. I've heard him talked about in that kind of way, where him always having a problem to solve is really beneficial for him as a person, not just for the benefit of everybody else that gets to benefit off of those problems he's solving, right? Electric vehicles, the boring machine, the boring company tunneling under LA, rocket launching. A lot of people benefit off of that. But I think it was the guy that just recently did the biography on him that followed him around.
Isaac Walters.
Yeah, and he was saying, I heard him in an interview saying that he thrives off of being in that moment of the challenge constantly. So it's all personal, right? It's all relative to who it is in that seat. And I think both of what we're saying is accurate. It just depends on who it's being said to, and then like what people find comfort in, right? Some people find, like we were talking about, jumping from your job to go start your own business or something. Some people are totally cool, free as a bird, free falling and not even having the game plan.
Yeah.
They don't lose sleep over it. They're just cool. And they still might not succeed. They don't lose sleep. Me, on the other hand, I really needed that as smooth as possible transition that I could find, because I did not want to be where I got to in life and then end up behind that point, right?
Yeah.
I only wanted it to be a situation where I'm growing beyond that moment, and whether that was financially, experientially, types of clients, types of work that I'm getting to do or was getting to do. And so that's just me on a personal level. I've always been big on the idea of set yourself up for success. For me, the way that I do that is by kind of, trying to, control is definitely kind of part of it. You want to kind of control the situation in a way where you feel, where I felt good about, okay, when I actually make this leap, either there's something for me soft to land on down there, or I know my parachute's going to, deploy when I
So
pull
are
it.
you, and this is in reference to when you were making the jump
Yes.
from your 9 to 5
Yes.
to, okay.
Yes.
So how did you do that? How did you make that transition? Like, so you said you made a parachute or whatever. How did you do that?
Reverse engineering. That's
Okay.
that's so.
But like in that, like what ultimately ended up happening? What did you end up like?
So the reverse engineering for
in?
me was like, okay, how much money do I need to make? Because at the end of the day, right, that's a huge component, right?
Yes.
It's probably the biggest because I got bills to pay. I got, a life to live, the version of it that I would like to live and also upgrade, right? So I really kind of had to sit there with a piece of paper in front of me and go, okay, I want to make X, right? And if I want to make X, what are the different ways that I could get to that number, right?
Yeah.
And so I started thinking from
What was the number for you?
Rather not
Okay.
go into that. If that's cool.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah. So I'll tell you offline about that.
Okay, no worries.
Cool. So, but it, if you want to make X, right? So what I did is I was like, okay, this is the number I want to make. How many different ways, or what are the different options of how I could get there, right? And so I first started with not even industry, not who, but how many clients would I need on a monthly basis to be able to get that number, right?
Can I have that number? How many clients did you need?
3.
You needed 3 clients.
Well,
Retainer or?
Retainer was the model. And
Okay.
so, because to me, the retainer, I was on salary up
Yes.
until that point. So retainer was the closest version of that I could get to being independent, when in reality, it's still, there still is no safety net, but I was trying to build myself a safety
So
net.
in your mind, you needed 3 retainers, and even when you got that, it turned out to not be enough.
No, I hit the number exactly. And
Okay,
so
cool.
what I did was I started just with the number. I was like, okay, here's the number. Now, if I wanted 3, and here's the reason I picked 3, you could get that number off of 1.
Right.
Right. You could get that number off of 2.
Right.
From me and my personal comfort level, right, and kind of like that safety net I wanted to have, and feel like I kind of had a W-2 still, was, all right, well, if I only have 1 client and either they bounce out, something happens, they get hit by a car, like now I'm at 0.
Yeah.
And I don't like the idea, because now I'm back to square one.
Yeah.
And I'm back into figure it out mode.
I will
right?
say 2 feels like it's essential. 3 feels like it's at least, that's a sweet spot.
3 was cool because in my head, I was like, well, I feel really good about my ability to work with clients and my relationship skills and my ability to maintain those relationships and clients. So I was like, if I have 3, then I lose 1, right? For whatever reason. I still have 2. Bills are still getting paid. That number, it's still close enough to that number where I'm not stressing. And with those 3, I'm also stacking money,
Yeah.
more than I would. So I'm also building a safety net in that way of money I'm not even touching, right?
Yeah.
So when I was able to kind of work through that, 3 was the number. If I lost 1, I still got 2. If I lost 2, I still got 1. But the whole time, money is still coming in rather than only going out. And I never want to be in a situation where money's only going out, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of like what's in the bank, because that means the pool is draining. It's not maintaining level or filling up, right?
Yeah.
So that was the comfort number for me. And it played out so great, man. And what was awesome about it is I got those 3 clients, and that really, it took me about a year to work through that of not even knowing who they were going to be.
All right, so you transition from marketing to working as a photographer almost exclusively, or as what was it?
Really still marketing. So like I view myself, man, as, if someone asks me, what is your business?
Yeah.
Marketing management and consulting with
Okay.
a strong emphasis on media production.
What aspect? Because to me, I've been very humbled by marketing.
Okay.
And what
In
I
what
realize
way?
is that the word marketing, what I realize is that the word marketing is kind of like the word biology, right? Where it's like, it's huge.
So many different facets,
Exactly.
right?
Like when I started learning, when I realized like, oh, I thought I knew a lot about marketing. In reality, I know a lot about branding. I know a lot about advertising. Those are like, that's kind of like, I know a lot about the ankle.
Right.
You know what I mean? You
Right.
don't know shit about all of it. You know
Are you the
what I mean?
orthopedic, or are you, what specialist are
Exactly.
you? Right?
Ears, nose, mouth,
Yeah.
throat, whatever. So when you say marketing, like, so
Yeah.
what is your specialty within that?
Yeah, so like kind of going back to like my previous job, I was with that company for almost 13 years, 12, 13 years, somewhere in that range. And I literally was doing everything from the website designs, the e-commerce designs, the build outs, whether I was doing them or we were hiring another company, I was the one overseeing that. I'm doing the digital media when it comes to, social media, running that, going from 0 to 1 million followers on Facebook, right? Events and activations, where in-store appearances, in-store events, bringing DJs.
For what kind of clients?
Well, we did a lot of headwear at the
That's
time.
right,
I was
okay.
with streetwear brand. We had other products, but really our forte was headwear. So working with companies like Lids in the mall. I'm going into Lids and all over the U.S. and bringing DJs and promotional models and, not just setting up the event, but then promoting it so fans of the brand are showing up to come participate in what we're doing that day within the store. That's why when I was talking about the jack of all trades, I never want to come across all that, but my experience over that amount of time, we were a small company doing really big things.
Yeah.
And so when you're in a situation like that, especially if you're a single, solo entrepreneur, the amount of hats that you're wearing and you have to wear, you by default are getting all of the experience. Being able to manage that is tough, but because of that, I was able to really develop skill sets in all those areas with a really small team, and we got really, really good at it. So I would say the all-encompassing of marketing. If you look at a business, right, like a big corporation that has a marketing department, that's a department, right? You're going to have the marketing head, the vice president of marketing, the C-suite level person. They're really overseeing and facilitating that department. But in that department, you'll have the digital media arm that's handling SEO only. You'll have the social media team that's only handling social media. You'll have the graphics guy that's developing all of the graphics for the social team, the SEO team. And it's really like you're a composer at that point. You kind of got like the orchestra. And
so to you, the next logical step is, like if I'm doing this on my own, I've already been doing all this stuff.
Right.
I might as well just incorporate photography and video and whatnot.
Well, so we ended up developing our own internal media production company over there. So when we were there, I ended up getting to work with, the Dallas Mavericks and, A to Z planning out.
How did that come about?
Just actually through the headwear. Like we started doing headwear collaborations with some like different teams, like the Mavs, the Texas Rangers, that sort of thing. And one thing I always say, how can you add value to a situation, right? If I'm selling you a product, I'm trying to extract value from you, right? Well, how can you sell someone a product, extract value, but then also add value into the situation? For us, it was like, hey, we do your hats. We also can supply really high-level marketing materials that you don't have to create, you don't have to pay for. We're just going to give them to you.
Right.
Which is going to then, if you think about like a company like a Lids or something like that, they need these kind of assets, but they need them at a certain level, right, to promote the brands. Usually, they're having to pay someone on staff, they're contracting out an agency, or they're relying on the brand. Well, brands aren't always set up, especially when they're a smaller business kind of operation. They're not always set up to be able to produce those kind of assets. But when you can come to the table and say, hey, we got this amazing product that we want you to sell in your stores, we're also going to help you support it from a marketing standpoint, and you don't have to lift a finger. Here you go. And it's high level material. You get indoors a lot easier that way because they're seeing the extra value.
This would be for selling merchandise.
To
Is this still what you do for? Like, how do you incorporate that into the rest, like to your business or whatever? What's an example of?
Man, I think adding value is my relationship building with people, right? And I think that's where the biggest value adds. And actually, we had a good talk about this over coffee.
Yes.
I would love to get into that kind of conversation.
I want to too, absolutely.
So relationship building, and this applies to anything, but just as a value adding applies to any scenario. But like, let me give you an example today. So I've been getting into the comedy scene, as you know, not as a comedian, but just shooting photo, video for these guys, right? Develop some relationships with guys like David Lucas. David Lucas and I, we have worked together, 2 or 3 times now, developing good rapport, right? And that's the people skill component. But an example of value adding would be like today. I was just with David earlier. The original game plan was, hey, we're going to go grab lunch. I'm going to meet you at your house. We're going to go then get some food. Well, then David finds out he's got to pick up his car, right? His car's ready and it's ready to be picked up from, I think he's having it fixed or something custom done to it. I don't know. He's calling an Uber. Dude, my car's sitting outside right now. Why don't we just hop in that?
Right.
He's like, well, dude, it's 25 minutes away. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to do right now. I was here to hang out with you. I'm adding value. It's a little thing, right? But little things like that go a really long way with people.
Now, one thing so just because I'm really bad at this stuff, so this is actually like a huge thing for me that I can learn from.
Well, we kind of sat on opposite ends of that topic over coffee. Like
we did.
Really what the conversation was, relationship. A lot of people call it networking.
Yeah.
I would prefer to call it relationship because I think networking is such an overused term that is kind of vague, and a lot of people can't even define it. They're like, hey, I'm at a bar and there's a mixer or some like event going on with other people. I'm networking.
Yes.
It's like, if you're not relationship building, you're not networking.
Well, so let's just, I guess I'll get back because I want to learn. Like this is something I need to learn. So basically, here is the dual problem, the problem in my head. On one hand, I understand that this is how the world works. I need to get better at building and maintaining relationships. On the other hand, I think this is an actual problem. What you're describing, like when you're talking about showbiz, when you're talking about, that's beautiful, right? But really what you're describing is cronyism, right? So when you say it's all about who you know or whatever, when people say that for photography or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. But once you start talking about highways and infrastructure, people go, oh, that's cronyism. It's the exact same thing.
Or nepotism with family members get involved, right?
Why did so-and-so get a prison contract? Why did so-and-so get the hospital contract and now people are dying? Oh, it's because the governor gave it to his idiot brother-in-law or whatever the hell, or the guy at the golf club.
Did a favor for his
friend, that type of thing. And it's because you're rewarding proximity and not skill set. Yes. Yeah. If you reward skill, you get more skill. If you reward proximity, you just get people fighting for proximity. And going to what you're saying, where it's like, literally the problem is this. The literal problem is I understand I have two things. I'm trying to get good at relationship, but the more time I spend on that is time taking away, getting from skill. And the world, I think, suffers from that. Although I understand that this is how the world works, I'm saying that the people literally suffer in the sense that, like, in photography and what we do, it's like, okay, I didn't get this gig, that doesn't matter. But it is the same thing. The same thing that goes into hospitals, whatever, the contracts that go into, sending bombs to Ukraine and all this stuff. Literally, it's all cronyism. And so on one hand, and I feel like I understand it, and I understand that this is the way it works. I really do feel like it's important to just remind people or anybody hearing, like, no, this is actually not good. Like, it's a good thing for you as an individual, but for the culture and for people all around, this is a bad thing to make it a game about proximity rather than a game of just like being good at the thing,
right?
That you're doing.
So what I'll say to that, because I think it's a great point. And in those different areas that you mentioned, like, that's you call it corruption, a lot of times too, right? With proximity, I always think that the best are like, the cream rises to the top, right? So what I think happens,
you say that.
Well, I think if we're gonna have this combo, we kind of have to remove government and politics from it in that sense, because I think in that instance, it's really difficult to not to exist. I almost feel like that's baked into the cake, and there's no way to like stop that from happening because it's so commonplace.
I think there's two problems with this whole idea of the cream, the cream rises to the top thing. Number one is, it's survivor bias. You're reverse filtering, right? You're looking at the top,
right?
And you're going whatever. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's the people who want it the most or whatever, that type of thing. Although I will say is, on the way to being number one, there's going to be a lot of people that fall. Like if you're talking about sports, for example, they got injured, they got somebody pregnant, they got to get a real job,
right.
Whatever, that type of thing. But the other thing is that because of this filtering problem, you run into people who there's the best,
right.
And then there's just this second class that's nowhere near it.
Right.
When in reality, what you could get is both. You could get both and another class that's much closer to
right.
that. And the reason why I'm saying that, and I wonder because if you work in the sports world, which I want to talk more about in a moment, but I used to work for an NFL player who would talk about how basically anybody that isn't on the field, all of the bench players, he's like 60% of the players in the NFL are there because of proximity, because their dad is whatever, an investor, whatever.
Call, yeah,
that type of thing. He's like, you would be shocked that like the extreme majority of quote unquote like jersey wearing players suck at football. And that's what I mean, where it's like, well, you wouldn't have that if it wasn't about proximity. You would have the starters, and then you would have the people that are right below them that are actually also pretty good.
Right. So, you know who I think really is the the person that suffers from that more than anybody is that team or the business owner,
Sure.
right? That's participating in it. Because, even like you talk the government political corruption or cronyism idea of it, at a certain point, everyone knows what's up.
Yeah.
Everyone knows, like, even if it's the football scenarios, like, dude, how is that guy on the team right now? How does that guy have a jersey on his back right now? Even if he's sitting on the bench, it's like, you always hear that thing like, dude, I'm better. I would play better than that guy, and I think those are actually the people that suffer from it. Sure, the fans or maybe the citizens in like the government example, right? They are either going to be beneficiaries or they might also suffer from it, right? But at a certain point, fans stop attending the game, right? If the wins aren't coming, right? The coach loses his job because the owner's going like, yo, man, we're losing and people aren't showing up. We're not selling parking. We're not selling concessions. We're not hitting our numbers, right? We have to change it up. We got to shake up the team. So I don't think it's I think it's those people in those positions, the businesses, the teams, the political, factions, they're the ones that ultimately pay the price for that at the end of the day if they participate in it that way. And I think there's a blend of, so like let's kind of think about like from a music perspective for a second. Like let's take someone like an Adele, like an Ed Sheeran, one of those top level raw talent. Like you can't deny their talent, right? Like everyone knows they're one of the best at what they do, and it's a raw talent kind of thing. Yeah. Well, how many people are just as talented? Is Adele the most talented female singer, or are there other people all around the world that are just as talented or more talented?
I think about this all the time.
But they never got an opportunity to be exposed to the right person. Yeah. What about that person?
Well, yeah, and that's why that would be my counterpoint to
the steel man, right? Yeah.
Well, my steel man or my counterpoint for when people talk shit about like things like TikTok and Instagram. Right. Is that now because of TikTok, Instagram, what we're doing here right now, podcasting, all of these scalable medias, is it allows people to break down those gatekeeping and break down those walls so that we can, hopefully get more Adeles or whatever. Because the truth of the matter is, I think that there's way more. I think TikTok proves it when you see the amount of talent that is out there, where it'll be a farmer making sketches literally in the middle of like Idaho, or something like that, and you're like, this guy is hilarious. He's an incredible actor, and he doesn't even want to be. He wants to be a farmer, and it makes you realize like, oh, there's top tier talent all over, and we are not benefiting from it because they don't happen to be Ethan Hawke's daughter or whatever the hell that that type of thing.
Or they're just in a place where it's impossible to get that exposure. Sure. Like think about even like where you live, right? Like if you're in LA, you have a really good chance of being in the right place to be. You could be singing in a mall, right? And some record exec is walking by because he's shopping for his daughter right now, and he hears you singing on some little rinky-dink stage in the mall for like 10 people, So
I mean, that literally happened here for Cam Patterson. I mean, that literally is what happened to him. Is he came
Shout out to Cam Patterson.
Cam Patterson, probably going to be one of the all-time.
Love that guy,
literally
man.
was
Love
walking.
That
guy. Brian Simpson sees him on TikTok.
Okay.
He's literally walking. Brian Simpson's walking out the mothership. Cam Patterson is literally walking across the mothership. Brian Simpson goes, "Holy shit, that's the comedian I just saw." And then he goes up to him and says, "You got to come do this open mic." And now the rest is, if anybody knows who Cam Patterson is, like that's
I didn't know that. That
was like lighting the match, for the right to the face of the bomb or whatever.
From like an opportunistic standpoint, right? You're just right place, right time.
Yeah.
Right.
Now, in his case, it is also, that's almost a counter to your point where it's like Cam Patterson is the cream of the crop. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it was going to be one of the others.
Cam Patterson could be like that. He is that person, right? But if he wasn't there in the moment, right? Brian Simpson doesn't just happen to be aware of him because he's not scrolling at the right time, right? And see him pop up on his feed to even make that connection. I mean, you can't write the script for that.
But the counter to that is just at bats, right? If Brian Simpson didn't see him, somebody else would have, right? Maybe he would go to maybe goes to the comedy store and somebody goes, "This dude's a star," and now he's at the store instead of the mothership, that type of thing. Could be, yeah. But yeah, so I mean. This all starts, though, with you talking about relationships and about how it sounds like you're pretty good. And the original thing that I was going to ask about was, you talked about giving value to David Lucas, which I'm just going to...
Which is a really random small piece of value, but it's a personal piece of value.
I totally understand what you're talking about. Now, here's my question. So for most people who don't know this, David Lucas is a pretty big comedian. Sells out theaters all over the country.
He's doing it.
Yeah, he's doing it. So in a weird way, it's kind of like most people are, if anybody knows who David Lucas is, they're gonna go, well, how did you even get to that point where it's like, so can we like, how before you even get to like David Lucas, or you've shot with like Odell Beckham Jr., correct, and things like that. Like,
not Odell, but I've worked. Like I said, the Mavericks. I was doing their game intros. Working with Luka and Dirk, and I managed Delino DeShields, the center fielder for the Texas Rangers for 3 seasons, and different people like that of notoriety. I've been around that a lot. I mean, this is not a brag, but you can scroll my gram and you can see, and a lot of it has nothing to do with me holding a camera,
Yes. Yeah.
And all of that is built off relationships. Treating people like people,
right?
And I think that's more of what it is. It's not chess moves. It's not going, if I do this, then this is going to happen. It's just when you're adding true value, it's got to come from like a genuine place.
Yeah.
Like even something like another example, like Hans Kim, right? First time I'm shooting with him in Dallas, he cruises in with his little suitcase, and that suitcase has his merch in it, right?
Yeah.
And he's the headliner of the show. He's got his openers with him, and I'm used to being around like bigger, music artists and that sort of thing that have a whole team, an entourage, a manager, this person that carries the bag for the guy. And obviously Hans is on the rise and he's blowing up in real time. And I see that and I was like, and he's walking through the crowd.
So wait, when was this? Like,
this is a year ago.
Okay.
You
haven't met him yet?
I had just met him at one of his shows, but I went there with the intention of meeting him
again. Okay.
I was a fan of his work.
Right.
I had never even been to a comedy show before, but I'd seen him online and I was laughing. I was following him because I just thought it was funny, and decided like, hey, he's in town. I'll go. Worst case scenario, I don't get to meet him.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have a great time. Right. Well, but my whole goal was to meet him with the intention of if I meet him, I can add value. And what that value add was, prior to the suitcase story, was after the show. Hey, and quick tip, you want to meet any of these comedians, most of them hang out after the show to shake hands with everybody. So if you want to do that.
I guess to make it even broader.
Yeah.
What is like of the people that you've met or anything like that, just generally speaking, I guess I'm kind of asking for myself because it's like I already meet comedians all the time or whatever. But like just broadly speaking, if you want to meet somebody, how do you typically go about doing that?
Is this
All right, let's come up with maybe we do a little exercise here. Let's say there's not a huge movie star or like a TV show, maybe a reality TV show star, podcaster. I don't know, let's pick one. Let's pick a podcaster. How would you try and go about meeting this person?
Well, it really depends on who it is, man. I mean, I've had the most incredible, some of the biggest opportunities come from literally just sending a blind DM or message to someone thinking there's no chance they're ever going to see this. I mean, Soulja Boy back in the day, the name White T comes from him. He gave me that name and it went viral on a YouTube video.
Interesting.
Back 15, 16 years ago. And
wait, what happened?
So at the time he's blowing up, right? Crank That just came out. I'm playing college baseball for the Westerners in West Texas, Western Texas College. And I thought he was super, just the whole idea of him was cool. He's the first one that starts putting out those vlogs, right? Showing the behind the scenes of his life. He's on tour. He's showing he had a camera guy following him around. Edits are going up on YouTube. It was the first time I was ever even exposed to the idea of a vlog, right? I'm watching that in my dorm, right? The song's blowing up. We're in the athletic dorms, the basketball team, the baseball team, guys that could kind of dance, the volleyball team, everyone's doing the dance, learning it, and it's becoming a viral sensation. He's like labeled the king of the internet. Well, I'm looking at him like, this dude's like the same exact age as me. That looks like the most epic lifestyle ever. Yeah. And I'm watching it from his perspective, right? Not just the music videos and the stuff that you see as a fan, right? But the behind the scenes portion. And, remember I'm doing the websites and the graphic design. And so I was like, man, I would love to get connected with him. And I would love to, see what's the value add, right? So I make a YouTube account, right? Because at the time he's getting millions of plays on MySpace every day, millions every day on multiple songs. He's getting millions of views on YouTube. Literally, they're calling him the king of the internet.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, man, this isn't likely. But one day before baseball practice, I just made a YouTube account. I sent him a private message. and just said, hey man, love what you're doing. I make websites and I do graphic design. If you're open to it, I would love to, do some custom, website work or MySpace work for you. I won't charge you. I just am asking like if there's opportunity for you to connect some dots for me, that would be great.
Yeah.
Send it thinking there's no chance this dude's going to see it based on the level of activity happening,
right.
And so I go to practice. I come back 4 or 5 hours later. I refresh my laptop. Boom, I got a reply. I click on it thinking there's no way it's him. You know how like when you sign up for like Gmail, you get like 3 emails from Google and they're like, hey, welcome to Google. I'm thinking it's like that from YouTube or something. I open it. He replied to me. He's like, hey man, love the work. Yeah, I'm down. 2 days later, at that time, FaceTime doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm on my Mac. I have iChat and there's video calling on iChat. We're now FaceTiming in the room from the videos I've been watching where he's first starting to blow up, right? And we're connected. And like no one believed me, right? The whole basketball, I told a bunch of my friends on the baseball team, the basketball team, I got half the baseball team, half the basketball team. They're like, dude, there's no way. I was like, all right, I'm talking to him tonight after practice. We got a little discussion we're doing. If you want to be in there, y'all got to hide behind the wall because I don't want him to know that there's 20 people in my room, like part of this moment. They're all hiding behind it. And, sure enough, like I'm talking to him, but that's an example of like a total, throw a dart and hope it lands and it hits the bullseye. Right. So the name component, we end up getting cool. I'm doing his MySpaces for him, start traveling with him. There's a connection there with the...
You start traveling with him?
Well, traveling with him in the sense that the brand that I was working for at the time with the headwear, we ended up getting an endorsement deal with him. From him.
Well,
and
awesome.
So with the relationship that I had, it was kind of a natural fit for me to be with him whenever we were doing brand stuff with him, right? Because I'm kind of like a friend of his, right? I'm kind of a perfect liaison, right? Because there's already the familiarity. So one night, I'm in Atlanta. I was driving to Atlanta from Dallas like once, twice a month sometimes at that time, usually with stuff that he was doing because he was living there. And that's where the music videos are getting shot and all that kind of stuff. So product placement, that sort of thing. I'm staying at his house one night and his thing was YouTube. He's making videos all the time just from his house, whatever he's doing, uploading them, millions of views. Well, at the time, the first iPhone had just come out and I jailbroke my iPhone. And there was this app that I was able to download that it was this dumb thing, man. It looked like your phone screen with all the app icons were on it. And it would make it look like popcorn was popping on your phone, right? And it was like this magic trick.
Yeah, this is back when everything wowed us. No, but I just remember the fake beer thing with the iPhone. Like everything about any little stupid thing you could do just wowed us for some reason.
Exactly, but you could sell it. And I saw this magician use that app, the jailbroken app, and he had a piece of popcorn to where the screen fills up with popcorn, and then he puts his hand behind the screen, right? Yeah. Can't see it, and then pulls out a real piece of popcorn and then eats it. And so that's the trick. So I got that app and I'm at his house. It's like midnight.
You're at Soulja Boy's house.
At Soulja Boy's house, yeah. And it's at midnight and I was like, yo, check this out. And I do it for him, his guy Arab at the time, another guy Jabbar, like his hype guys, his crew, and they're tripping. They're like, whoa, like because I sold it. I made it look legit. I practiced it. And he goes, we got to do that again, but on video. And we're putting that on YouTube.
Yeah.
So there's this video. I'll send it to you. You can check it out.
That's amazing.
There's a video back then. I got no hair. You won't recognize me. He makes me put on this diamond chain of his, like, because I got to look like a part of the crew or whatever. Yeah. And he opens it up and he's like, hey, it's your boy, Soulja Boy. Tell him I got my favorite white boy with me. Like, says it just like that. And I was like, okay, cool. Favorite white boy. That's what's up.
Yeah.
He's like, he's got this magic trick. And he's
Soulja, there's no endorsement greater than Soulja Boy's favorite white boy.
Yeah, that one will stick with me for a while. But he's like, this is my favorite white boy. He's got this crazy magic trick. He's going to do it right now. All right, go. So I do it, right? The popcorn's popping. I don't have a piece of popcorn to do it. So at the end of the app, like this trick, it was basically a video playing on your screen that looked like your home screen, right? And the popcorn fills up the screen. I put my fingers behind it. When you put your fingers behind it on the screen, there's fingers in the video that go in it. So it looks like your fingers are inside the phone. I pull it out, and I kind of hide it, and then you tilt it, and the video looks like the popcorn pours out. So I just poured it into my mouth. Boom, now the phone screen. He goes, they're all freaking out. And that was my favorite white boy. And he's about to end the video. And I go, wait, man, is it just favorite white boy or do I have a name? Right? And like I told you, my name's Taylor, right? He goes, yeah, your name's Taylor, but we're going to call you White T. And I was like, and his buddy goes, yeah, White T. And as he's ending the video, I'm literally saying to him, and you don't hear this because he ends it, but I go, White T. I go, that's the dumbest name I've ever heard. I hated the name.
That's going to go on your tombstone.
Oh, for sure.
That's the dumbest name. White T.
The dumbest name I've ever heard.
Dumbest name I've ever heard.
Yeah, so video ends. He goes to upload it to YouTube. I'm like, you're really putting that on YouTube? He's like, yeah. And he goes, I guarantee by the time we wake up, it's like midnight, 1 a.m. He goes, by the time we wake up, that's going to have a couple 100,000 views. So,
which for Gen Z at the time, that meant that's billions in internet inflation. That's billions of views.
Internet inflation, I like that. Yeah. So he uploads it. The second that thing uploads and it says finished on the progress bar, he goes to the video page, refreshes it. It already has 3,000 views.
Jesus.
Already in like seconds.
Yeah.
And so I go, man, he goes, yeah, I guarantee that's going to have a couple 100,000 views, maybe more by the time we wake up. It'll be at a few million by the end of the week. And he goes, I guarantee within the next 2 weeks, someone's going to stop you because they recognize you as White T. And I was like, dude, there's no way. So you remember like the MTV Sweet 16 show? So they did a special edition with him for his 18th birthday. And that was the very next weekend. So I go back to Dallas. I fly back from Atlanta. And a couple days later, I'm back at DFW Airport to fly back to Atlanta for the taping of his 18th MTV birthday party, right?
What were you doing for them? Just hanging out?
Just with the brand and the endorsement and all that. It's kind of, we had product, in it and that sort of thing. And just also with relationship building, consistency is key.
Yes.
Always being in the mix. That's why I'm out here right now. It's to be in the mix, right? Yes. And so I'm in DFW Airport. I get through security. I'm going to my gate and I'm walking and I hear like footsteps kind of running behind me. And this lady goes, hey. And I don't know who she's talking to. I just keep going, hey. And she taps me on the shoulder. She goes, I know who you are. And it's like a mom, right? Like I'm 18, older at the time, but like a mom, right? And she goes, I know who you are. And I go, I'm just looking at her computer. I forgot about the YouTube video. I'm not even thinking about the whole, I'm on his YouTube page. It didn't really mean a lot to me. And I go, okay. She goes, you're White T with Soulja Boy. And I was like, I go, yeah, I am. She goes, my son saw you over there. He's too nervous to come over here and meet you, but I just wanted to come over here so I could tell him that I met you. I'm tripping, dude.
Like
I'm
nuts.
tripping. I'm like, that is why. And that was 3 days later. It didn't even take the 2 weeks that he said he guaranteed. Bro. So I'm in Atlanta that whole week.
And this is before we even, the concept of viral videos, none of that existed.
None of that existed. So that shows you the power of of him and where he was at and his influence at the time. Well, then I'm in Atlanta, which is like the mecca for hip hop at the time. Every major artist is out there. And every artist you could think of with a name at the time, Sean Kingston, Bow Wow, Young Jock, they're all at his party. I'm walking through Lenox Square Mall a day later, which is the big poppin' mall in Atlanta. And I have people stopping me in the mall that are Soulja Boy fans going, White T, we saw you taking pictures and stuff like that. Makes no sense, right? So that is where the name White T came from. I absolutely hated it. The idea of even introducing myself like that to somebody, insane, right? Because it sounded so dumb, right? But I embraced it, and it became this really my first experience with branding yourself, right? And I leaned into it. I was already getting noticed, right? So, all right, I hate the name. Other people seem to be cool with it. I'm just going to rock with it.
Yeah.
So I literally started introducing myself that way. I changed my business cards to say White T. If I met you, I don't care if I met you where I met you. It could be any scenario. Hey, what's your name? White T. What's up? Nice to meet you. White T. Yeah, what do you do? Sidebar, I was dabbling in rap as a joke.
Yeah.
At the time, there's a whole other story to that. We don't have to go into that, but
hey, dude, I get it. You try to ride that wave, bro. I got you.
Well, no, but had I not done that, man, had I not leaned into that, I genuinely believe that all of that was the catalyst moment for the relationship building with notable people that kicked off. And the way that that works, you get cool with one of those people, right? Because it's a small world. Think about those types of people. They're typically viewed as inaccessible.
Correct.
Right? So how do you access the inaccessible?
Yes.
Well, once you get access to one person that's inaccessible, right? They all kind of feel the same. Like 99% of their interaction, this plays into the value add component with anybody that we're talking about. 99% of those people's interactions on a daily basis are not normal, right?
Yes.
With people.
Yeah.
They don't get treated like a regular person. So people ask me, like, how do you do that? Treat people like people. Like treat these people the same way you would treat your friends at home that are nobodies, right? And so I end up, like I said, really leaning into it. And once you have one or two people that are cool with you, other notable people connected to them see that, they're going, oh, that guy must be safe. He must be a safe person. So what is the treating him like a human being concept? Instead of going up to them like a fan would, hey, can I get a photo? Hey, my mom's a huge fan. Can you say hi to her real quick? That whole thing. I'm going, hey, you want to go grab a bite to eat? Hey, you want to go grab a drink? Hey, you want to go do this? Hey, you want to go do that? That value add is like, hey, I'm going to be the 1% of interactions that you have today that are normal, right? And they're in a situation where their whole life is not normal at that point once you step into that role. So I think that applies to not just like celebrities. Let's say notable people. It could be the CEO of a company, like a big Fortune 100 company, right? Very inaccessible to most people, right? So how do you access the inaccessible? You got to treat them like just regular people that you have access to all the time, right? As soon as you step into that fan role and you cross that line, they will never view you as anything but a fan ever again. Yeah. And then they will treat you like that. Not like some bad way, but it's like, I mean, I've been around this for so long and so many people like this at high levels that, you know, they talk about that kind of thing in the backstage green rooms. Like they're like, oh yeah, man, this band was crazy. They're fanning out. Like they'll always say they're fanning out. Yeah. And, you know, there's a reason, like I've been in situations with these people where their family members are backstage with them. And then security comes in all of a sudden and kicks everybody out of the green room, right? All, including the family members, the mom, the dad, the whoever, because the artist texts security and say, hey, we want everybody out here. But for some reason, I get to stay. Family gets kicked out, but I get to stay. Well, their family can turn into fans. It can get weird from all different angles, right? Yeah. So when you're treating people like people, especially when they're in these positions, it's a breath of fresh air, you know? So that's kind of the story behind the name. I'll send you that video so you can watch that and like laugh at the way I look visually and all that. I wasn't as cool yet. You know?
No, I got you. How funny would it be if it goes viral again a second time around?
Be lovely. I'll embrace it, you know.
The problem that I was proposing, you know, to you in the break here is that I feel like I'm stuck. I feel like I have to get to the next step, and I think part of that problem is relationships. And you talked about how to add value. I guess part of my mentality was that I was thinking that my service is sort of the value.
Sure.
Although I understand that for most people that I want to shoot for, you know, like the average person, photography, video is a luxury service. Yeah. For most of these people, it's kind of a nuisance, if anything. I mean, some of them, it is a critical part of their business. But some of these people, you know, they have seen more photos of them than a human being probably ever should. Right. And so the idea of a photographer approaching them or a videographer approaching them and saying, hey, I'd like to work with you on this and that, or shoot this for you, it's just another a nuisance. So I guess that's kind of the hang up for me is how do you add value for somebody that you'd like to work with or collaborate or shoot for or anything like that? Right. How do you add value to them?
Yeah, so I think the best way is when they feel like you're not extracting from them. So even back to like the lids example, right? Hey, we want you to sell our hats. Who's going to benefit off of the hat selling? Technically everybody, lids and the hat maker, right? The creator of the hats, the brand. Well, who's going to benefit if the hats don't sell at lids, right? Only the brand that got the purchase order from lids. They're going to make money. Lids is going to be sitting on product and they're not going to make the sale, right? So when I was talking about, you know, that concept with lids, hey, we would like you to sell our hats. We're also going to add value by providing you with very high-level marketing materials to support the sale of those hats so that you have a better chance of not sitting on the product. Sure. Then those hats sell. Now we're probably going to get a reorder and we're going to keep that process going. So like, in an example with a person that I want to work with, there's a lot of times where I'm around maybe a notable person, a celebrity or a comedian, someone I don't actually have a relationship with, right? How do you approach that person? Well, you could approach them by going, hey man, I would love to shoot photos for you, right? I would love to do this for you. Well, technically you are benefiting. They have people probably hitting them up left and right wanting to do that for them.
Exactly
every
right.
city that they go to,
Yes.
right? They probably have multiple DMs a day coming in saying, hey man, let's connect, let's build, let's do this. Well, you end up, or maybe I end up, or people in the same kind of position with these awesome assets that are definitely value adding assets, the beautiful imagery and presenting them in a way that if they were used is definitely going to enhance their image, enhance their look. It could get used on posters. There's all type of ways that they could benefit from those assets that they're not having to pay for technically, right? They're not having to spend $1 with you. So in that situation, I'm going up to whoever it is, the athlete, the comedian, and going, hey man, my name's so-and-so. I shot some photos of you tonight, got some killer shots that I think you would love. And I've got a Google Drive link or a Dropbox I'd love to send you. Could I get your email or number, whatever exchange, right? And feel free to use them however you want to use them. Whatever you want to do with them, put them on a poster, put them on a billboard. They're yours. If you don't want to use them at all, cool. No harm, no foul, but I just wanted to give you those. Yeah. In that situation, I'm now coming to them. There's no strings attached. There's no downside. The only downside risk is, and it's not even a risk, they just might not like it, might not use it, and I took a shot that didn't go in.
And you're saying you do this for free for some of these folks.
Yeah, but like you got to think like in the position that you're in, right? Like you could, if you're in a position, like if I was shooting at a game or something like that, and there's an athlete that I hadn't worked with yet, but I'm there and somehow I'm able to shoot, and I know I just got some epic shots of this particular guy, and there's a moment like for me to be able to approach him, obviously you got to be prepared for that moment. You don't want to go up and like sound like an idiot when you approach them. But when you go up to them, I'm going to be like, hey dude, got some crazy epic shots of you. I think you would love them. You can use them for whatever you want. I would love to just send you a Dropbox link.
And you're doing this for free though?
Well, I'm probably in a position where I'm making money in that situation, right? Yeah. But I don't know.
Are you using photography as a way to get to your marketing?
Yeah, so
that's kind of what I do. I use photo, or I was using photo to try and sell video. Is that kind of like what you're doing?
Specifically in the comedy sense, yes. And this is definitely not a brag or trying to sound cocky. I don't really do anything for free. It's very, very rare that I do something like that. I am a big believer in that early on, right? Like when you have no portfolio, you have no work to show or credibility. For the listeners and anything like that, when in your mind is a good time to justify doing something for free versus when is it saying, you know what, no, I'm not going to take this. Yeah, so I think it's where you're at in your career, right? Portfolio wise, like do you have really what it is credibility. Do you have credibility and reputation where you can always command a rate, always command a fee? You don't have that right out the gate when you just start. So like when you just start, that's when I'm a really big believer in the idea of like, go do spec work, go shoot a Gatorade commercial, even though they didn't hire you, just for the sake of the practice and to show what you could do with a brand like that. Gatorade may never see it, but some startup beverage company might see it and they might hit you up and be like, yo, we want you to do that for us. We got a $500 budget. Cool. You just made your first $500. Once you build a reputation and you build the credibility that allows you to command a rate and command the money, you're in a position where you technically don't have to take jobs if you want to. It's when you have the option not to, right? Meaning you're not sitting there going, I'll do anything for any amount of money. I'll do a shoot for $100. Like that's cool. That's great for the guy that's never made $100 doing a shoot, right? But you got people making $100,000 for a shoot. What is the guy shooting the Apple commercial getting versus the kid, that's just getting his start with the camera for the first time that convinces some local pizza shop to let him shoot some photos of a pizza, right? I mean, it's night and day difference. So I think it really is relative to your level. Now, on the flip side of that, I was saying to you is in a very humble way, I feel like I have built up that reputation. I have built up that credibility where I really don't do anything for free. there's a small, very small, I can count them on my hand how many times I have done that in the last, let's call it 4 years, 5 years. And usually it is because I see an opportunity that I want to go after, that I know that if I'm able to get my foot in the door with this situation, it is going to be extremely valuable for me to do so, and it's going to really benefit me. So I'll take a little bit of a sacrifice right now and do it. So like, for example, with the comedy situation, and don't get me wrong, I make money off of my photography, my videography. It's, the marketing, I believe that plays into it. Like, to market, you have to have content to market, right?
Absolutely.
So I could be hiring people to do this stuff, but I feel like I'm fully capable, and other people seem to think I'm fully capable of just doing that as a service. It adds another stream of revenue to what I do, right? Not just only marketing, consulting. But for instance, with comedy, Hans, I saw him, I thought he was funny. If I could go meet him, maybe getting cool with him, adding value to what he's doing, I might now be in a position that allows me to start doing that with other people in comedy. Well, realistically, my goal isn't to just be the best comedy photographer. That's just really my way to be in the room, to add value, to even give me access to the room in the first place, right? To the people who I don't have any credibility in their world, right? Now, big picture, I see management opportunity. I see marketing opportunity. I mean, you never know when you connect with someone where that's going to go, right? And what could come from just meeting that certain person, what we talked about before, being exposed to the right person that can give you the opportunity in the first place, right? I believe my work also speaks for itself. So like the relationship building component plus the work justifies it every single time. So I think starting out is great. Or if you're already established, but you're not established in a particular area that you want to be established in and you see the value, I can justify it. I've been doing this now for a year in the comedy scene with a lot of intention. I'm now working with, Hans, Cam Patterson, David Lucas. David and I are talking about doing some stuff on the road together. Again, it's with the camera in my hand, but now I'm in these rooms with these people and I'm getting to expose them to everything else I do through conversation. Like, yeah, dude, I do photos, but really what I do, my business is this. Oh, really? I didn't know you did that. What do you mean? Like, you do marketing? Oh, well, I've worked with like athletes, sports teams, brands, etc. I put the A to Z plan together, start to finish. I'm the guy that can come up with the idea. I'm the guy that can pick up the phone, make that idea happen from an executable standpoint. And then if I need to, I can also document it, right?
It's so funny to me that you're saying this, because that's exactly what my plan has been. And instead, what has happened is this. The whole reason why I started doing photography for shows was to introduce myself and then eventually move on to video or maybe move into theaters or whatever the hell.
Sure.
And instead, the only thing that has happened is just more photo. For some reason, it's interesting. I love photography very much, but it's never what, for some reason, everybody thinks of me as a photographer, but it's actually never been what I wanted to be my main thing. And obviously I'm gassing myself up a little bit. It's probably because, I'm pretty good at it.
Hey, real quick for the record, this guy, my opinion, best photos at the mothership.
Thank you.
Kills it. Well, I think you really got to do, man, is you got to bridge the gap. And the gap that exists right now that you got to bridge is putting yourself out there to connect with these people beyond the photo, right? So, in the example of these comedians, I would be going up to them and I'd be saying, hey man, got some amazing work for you, right? And you could shoot them a DM, right? My only issue with shooting them a DM, not that it's not going to work. I've had major success DMing people, just blind hitting them up, right? But face-to-face interaction is the best interaction ever,
yes,
right?
Yeah.
You develop instant rapport with a person. There's like an energy exchange between your being and their being, right? In that moment. And it's a human-to-human kind of interaction. So I would be with them in person. They're right there in front of me. I'm not waiting. I'm going up to them. I don't even care if it's risky, in the sense of like, I don't want someone to see me stepping out of line, what they might think is out of line with my job role. You're just the photographer. Well, that's cool, but I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity. And as long as you are not trying to extract value from that person and it's a value add, it's a no harm, no foul situation. So I'm going up to whoever, hey man, I got some epic shots of you tonight. Feel free to use them however you want. How can I get this Dropbox link to you? That guy might then go, oh, hey man, here's my email. Hey, here's my manager's contact. Here's my phone number. Shoot me a text with the link.
Yeah.
You now just got proximity to that person, not because of anything other than, hey man, I got some value to add to the situation. Now it's up to them to determine, do they see the value in it?
Right.
They open up that Dropbox and go, dude, these are the best photos I've ever seen of myself ever. Well, now they might be hitting you up going, dude, hey, I'm going to be back in town. I would love it if you would shoot, or hey, dude, I'm going to do my first theater show and I would love you to be there to capture it. What's your rate? How can we work together more? But it wasn't you going up to them saying, hey, how can we work together?
Yes.
Now you're trying to get them to solve the problem, and it feels like a value extraction versus a value add, right? And so I think in all of those situations, as long as you operate from a place of like genuine intent and authenticity, and you truly are adding value, what can anybody say to that?
Yeah.
The worst case is that they open it up and they go, these aren't that good. They don't use them. And that opportunity never becomes something that, develops to a real, fruitful, situation, right? So I think there's like the only risk I believe in that is kind of feeling like an idiot, but I don't,
bombing basically.
Yeah, bombing. Yeah, in that moment. But if you really are good at your craft and you have other people that validate you and credibility and you're good, then there's a pretty good chance that they're going to see it too. And they're also used to seeing other people present this stuff. And when it's above the bar, right, that they're used to, a lot of times they want to keep that going. Like once you set a bar with someone, man, it's really tough for them to like go below that, right?
Yeah.
And so either they got to find someone that can replicate it the exact same way you do, or they just got to go to the one that set the new bar, right? So
I think another thing for like the listeners and everything like that to talk about is like comfortability in the space. So for example, one thing I always, I've been working out, I've been going to the gym since I was 13, I'm 31. Yeah. So at a certain point, I sort of, when people would say that they're too intimidated to go to the gym or they're intimidated by the gym, I would just be like, what the hell are you talking about? Right. But then I've kind of come full circle where you, just like anything else, you kind of start to look around and whatever, and you start to go, oh, I get why. I'm like, the fish comes out of the water for a brief moment. And one thing I've realized about the mothership is, for me, this is my forte into showbiz. This is my first time being around household names and things like that. And there is a huge intimidation factor, especially in the beginning. These days, not so much. But in the beginning, there's a huge intimidation factor for me. And it sounds like for you, you said what? You were on a viral video with Soulja.
Yeah,
Soulja
I've been around this kind of environment for, 16 years now. And even before that, in my baseball team, my Little League baseball team, 5 of the dads were professional baseball players.
There you go.
I've literally been around stuff like that for a long time. But the rule always applies to treat them like regular people. That is the thing that breaks that barrier, where you will literally see it when you do that with them. There will be a shift. They go, oh, you're not a fan. You're cool.
Yeah.
But
the reason why I'm bringing this up is something I remind myself, and I think it's important for people listening, is to just kind of understand that like it's going to take time to be comfortable in the space. And that's something I have to remind myself. It's like, exactly like that, where I'm kind of like, okay, should I be doing this? Should I be doing whatever? And I just have to remind myself where it's like, there's going to be a day where just like I can go to any gym at any level, whatever, and I don't think anything. I've been to gyms that cost $300 or whatever. I've been to a gym. There was a gym I went to that literally had the 10th strongest man on the planet, and he was deadlifting 1,000 pounds. And that I actually was intimidated. They would literally be like slamming. They were kind of, those people were assholes. But I've been to, so there you go. Where it's like when you're at a gym where literal 400-pound giants are actually physically slamming 800 pounds to the ground, trying to make as much noise as they can. Yeah, you can handle LA Fitness, no problem. So there's going to be a day where I can walk into a green room anywhere probably and not be intimidated or be uncomfortable. Sure. But the reason why I'm saying this is that I have to remind myself this, and I want to remind people listening that you do not have to necessarily immediately on your first try walk up to a household name and shoot your shot. It is totally okay to just try and first get comfortable in a space and whatever. I'm asking this though because I'm kind of at that point where I feel like I'm starting to get comfortable in the space.
Well,
and
I would say to someone who's trying to get comfortable in it, especially if you're just starting out or whatever. Obviously, you're well beyond the starting out point. You're crushing it, but the comfortability factor is like baby step it, right? Like there's levels to notoriety.
Sure.
Right. So you've got Michael Jordan, and you've got like the guy that never got off the bench, right? That is probably more accessible, easier to deal with, not as like big of a stardom power around him, but still it gets you in the room with that. It's an NBA player,
sure,
right? Or in hip hop, right, or music, right? I came a lot from like that rap hip hop background back then. With a lot of the people I was working with, you have your local rapper, you have the local Dallas rapper that is known in Dallas. Outside of Dallas, no one's ever heard of him, right? Big deal in his city, big deal nowhere else, right? That guy's a lot easier to talk to than the guy that is on the top 10, MTV video countdown every single week selling out stadiums. Yeah. So it's, if you want to try to flex that muscle and work that muscle a little bit and you're new to it, start small, start building that muscle with, people that are a lot more, it's a lot easier to be comfortable around and be yourself around, right? And like feel authentic. You have to come off as authentic with these people. It's not just come off as, you have to be authentic. That is the part of treating them like a normal person. It's when the inauthentic experiences of fandom, where it's the non-normal interaction or exchange, it becomes weird for them, right? Think about those videos you see where like some girl gets to go meet like Justin Bieber and all she can do is just scream.
Yes, yeah.
How normal is that?
Not.
And like, if you're Justin Bieber, you're used to it, but you're also like, I don't really know what to do in this situation. You're just screaming, versus like the girl that comes up and is like, hey, I just want to tell you how much your music has impacted my life. I'm a huge fan. I love what you're doing. I wrote this little message, for you, or I painted this picture and I just wanted to give it to you as a gift. And I just hope that you have a great show tonight.
Yeah.
Right. Those are two very different interactions. That girl is having a real conversation and there can be an exchange, right?
Yes.
The girl screaming at Justin Bieber, he's just like, hey, let's take a picture. Like it's not a normal moment, right? So,
well, actually, if you don't mind, I kind of want to transition into a little bit more about your business, like what you currently do, what your business is. There's a couple things that I wanted to get into, but if you don't mind, just like starting, like what does it look like these days? What are you doing?
Man, it's different every week, and that's what I love about it, is it's not the same monotonous thing every single day. Right now. So there's marketing consulting, right? Where I work with some brands where I'm not really executing a whole lot for them. I'm more kind of guiding and directing what they should be doing. And then the execution layer comes from them implementing that, right? So like, hey, you really need to be doing this in your social media. This is what it should look like. They might already have a social media guy on their team or girl on their team, and they just don't have the strategy, right? So it's more like strategy implementation, right? Giving them the blueprint. But once they have the blueprint, they can kind of run with it. Yeah. And then you're kind of tweaking it as you go. They're probably calling you for advice like, hey, we have this opportunity or this situation come up. We were thinking about going about it this way. What do you think? Maybe it's a great idea that they have. Maybe you go, that's cool, but I think you might want to approach it like this, right? So that's really consulting, right? There's the part where maybe I'm consulting and part of the execution layer where it's like, hey, you really need content. I know you have a content team. I'm sure you guys can figure it out. If you want help in figuring that out or doing it, I can also provide that service for you as well. So there's like the execution layer, right? Of I can provide these services for you that I'm telling you that you need, right? And sometimes I'm not even consulting for a client. They just know I do these services and they know they need it. They already understand their own blueprint internally. I've had nothing to do with it. But it's like, hey, we need to do a commercial. Hey, we need to do this. Hey, we need to do that. And we know that we like the work that you do with that kind of production. So let's work together that way. Yeah. And then in terms of like the details, outside of that, photo, video production is huge for me. But then I've also recently gotten into over like the last, really since COVID was going on, when Clubhouse was really popping, 3D animation, production. And that's me being hands-on with it, but that's also me developing a team.
What kind of client do you
Man,
use?
actually out here, are you familiar? One of my favorite clients that I work with in that capacity is a brand out here called Beatbox Beverages.
Never heard of it.
Okay, so they were on Shark Tank maybe, I think it's somewhere like it might have been like 2014 that they made their debut on Shark Tank. Forgive me, guys, if that's not accurate. I started out working with them purely with film. So here's actually a cool little client acquisition story, right?
Yeah.
So I was doing work for an Instagram account called PGA Memes, which is a golf meme account, right?
Yeah.
They had a tournament that they were hosting, a charity tournament at the Dallas Cowboys Golf Club, and I got hired to come in and do a recap video for PGA Memes for the whole tournament. Golf tournaments, a lot of sponsors come in, they sponsor individual holes. This is a really fun event. They brought in celebrities, some comedians. Blake Weber was there. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him, big internet guy. But personalities to then bring all the regular folks with the checkbooks to cut to the charity component, and enjoy the day. It's a fun time. I was out there to recap the whole event. I get to a hole, and Beatbox Beverages is sponsoring it. They're basically like a party beverage, technically classified as like a wine cooler. It's 11.1% alcohol, but you see them really big in the EDM festival, music festival scene, and they're crushing it. They went on Shark Tank. Mark Cuban loved it. Mark Cuban invests in the company. They get a deal off of it, and they've been crushing it ever since. But I get to the hole that they're at, and I just thought what they were doing was cool. They were having the golfers, they were basically having them take the beatbox and then use it as the tee for the golf ball and seeing who could hit the farthest ball off of the beatbox. And it was kind of this different thing,
Yeah.
And there was some fun little things, especially like when the comedian guys showed up, where they were kind of amping it up, and just it was a great time. Got some incredible content out of that. Well, I had no idea that they were going to be there. There was no one even from the company from a higher up standpoint there. They just kind of had field team members there managing the activation, right? They also hired their own camera crew from Austin to come into Dallas and capture their own content for them. I captured a bunch of content over there because it was so much fun in terms of everyone was having a great time at that hole and the content was great. So I stayed around for a minute. I ended up doing some edits around that content, the beatbox content, to give to PGA Memes. PGA Memes starts posting that up. And then I ended up getting reached out to by guy, Marshall, love you, man. He reaches out to me saying, hey,
you say you reach out via email, via Instagram?
So PGA Memes is posting up the content that I did.
Yeah.
And for them, it's brand content. So I got content of all the different brands sponsoring in addition to like a recap video. And so they start posting up those individual clips that I was putting together to kind of showcase the brands post-event. Like, hey, shout out to Beatbox. We had a great time at the hole 13, that kind of thing. And another way to highlight their sponsorship, right, through the social media post-event. PGA Memes was tagging me and giving me film credit in all of the posts that I had done, for them. Beatbox sees that. Guy over there on their team named Marshall reaches out to me and says, hey, man, through Instagram. He hits me out on a DM. Dude, absolutely love the content that you guys, or that you did for us. Would you be okay if we use some of that? And okay, here's an opportunity where you could be like, yeah, if you want to cut a check, right? I was like, dude, absolutely. Whatever you want to use, go for it. I'll send you a Google Drive link to like these different clips. As long as PGA Memes is good with it, like feel free. Tag me, whatever, like good to go. I'm looking at it in my head as like, okay, here's a brand. I didn't know anything about them at the time. Here's a brand reaching out to me, loving what I'm doing. Yeah. It's already done. I'm already paid. I'm satisfied. Here you go. Something, what could come from that? Well, I give it to him. He's like, dude, we actually like the content you did better than the stuff that the crew we hired from Austin came in to do. Cool. Here you go. 2 weeks later, I'm getting a call back. Hey man, or I'm getting a DM. Hey dude, can I get your number? I'd like to talk to you about some other things that I think you could kind of help us with. Literally 2 weeks after that golf event, I'm now doing a paid commercial for them, like a social commercial, but
a social spot.
Yeah.
Which, to be honest, these days that's like all I want, because that's how you get the retainers.
Right. Exactly. So
like I had this idea that like I want to shoot commercials, and I still do, but the truth is, it's like you hear these commercial directors talk about this where now they're like, they feel like they're making less money than the social spot,
Right.
And that's because that's how you get the retainer.
Yeah.
That's how you don't have to worry about the winter and the summer and all that. So that's kind of like, I'm trying to figure out how do I get more of these big social spots.
Right, exactly. So I do that first piece for them. Maybe a month or two later, they want to do a bigger campaign. They want to do a video campaign that showcases all the flavors, much more elaborate piece, bigger budget, opportunity. And it's like, cool, in a very short amount of time, just from seeing an opportunity there to capture content for the client I was already working for that worked for them. This other brand that is inside of that content sees it and is like, man, we like what he did. We want more of what he did. Now they're hiring me to do that commercial spot and then a bigger campaign. Well, during, like the Clubhouse days, you know what I'm talking about, Clubhouse, right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So that was super.
It's so funny that Clubhouse is already kind of over. Like you said, Clubhouse days.
Been over.
I thought that was the next thing, which should tell you that it wasn't going to be. If I'm like, this is it, then it's like, because I'm so out of like tune that,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had started, there's a couple guys I started working with just for fun during that time, playing around with some 3D ideas. Really, they were pushing me on it. They were like, hey man, you could have done this with 3D this way. And I was like, I've worked with 3D before in the past, and like, it's a complicated thing. It's not easy. Like a lot of people stop at motion graphics or never even touch it, 2D motion graphics.
Exactly.
Then they go to 3D, it's a whole nother beast. So I kind of like avoided it, but then they kept pressing me like, no man, I think you should dabble in this. So I started to mess with it. I've already got this client, Beatbox, and we're doing some pretty high level stuff. And I said to them, hey, here's a couple examples of some 3D content that we could do just to put it in front of them and just see what they thought, right?
Yeah.
You got to also think when you're putting something new like that in front of a client, if they don't have a reference point for ever doing it before, it can sound scary. Like photo and video production is like standard. Every small business does that now, right? So like everyone's like, oh, no big deal to hire a photographer, no big deal to hire a videographer. That's just like what you do when you have social media. But 3D was another beast. It took a while of just, again, for fun, in the spare time, putting little things together for them just to show them examples of what could be done in 3D and how much more freedom and flexibility you have in that medium, especially for a brand like theirs. Well, eventually they kind of came around to it and like, hey, we think we actually want to try a 3D production, like an actual budgeted paid one. So we ended up doing a campaign piece for them, all flavors. And what was so great about that, man, is it was the first time I was able to commercialize that within my business and make money doing it. The new, got put all over, social media and, playing it on giant festival screens and in store on TVs, like at gas stations and, Kroger's and places like that where they're, selling the product.
That's amazing.
The coolest part was this last year, Shark Tank does a follow-up episode with him. It's the very first episode of the new season of Shark Tank this year. And I had a little heads up, like, hey, you might, the guys from the brand here, you might want to watch Shark Tank this week, and I was like, okay, like, you might see something cool. Well, turns out that when they do this follow-up, and Shark Tank does this when they have a success story, basically, like an investment that actually worked, right? So they go, hey, we want to talk about, Beatbox. And they do the flashback to when they're there. It's like a 2-minute kind of piece on them. And like the first, 30 seconds, I'm watching, boom, that 3D animation campaign that we did is now playing on, I'm not sure if they're Fox or whatever, but I'm sitting there watching MSNBC. Yeah. So I'm watching it in the living room. And I'm just like, dude, this is wild. Yeah. Like something that
There's something different about it being on TV, even though it's now like a legacy or whatever. There's something different that's like, shit, bro.
Yeah. And so like
old money.
Yeah.
It's old,
100%. Like, but just even the mainstream kind of component of the placement, right? Yeah. Like it's very household, driven. So that was obviously very encouraging, but I already saw the benefits of it. I'd already commercialized it. Now it was more or less, how do I replicate that over and over again? And I'm looking at 3D, right? As now here's an additional revenue stream and service that I can offer that also sets me apart. There's a guy, I got to meet him one time through a buddy of mine named Wolfpat. Wolfpat Films, epic content creator, epic filmer, photographer, local guy out in Dallas. He was friends with a guy named Barton Damer. Barton Damer runs a company called ABC, Already Been Chewed. They are like one of the most high-end 3D animation companies. They're doing Nike campaigns, Google, like Camelback, like massive brands. They have an office just outside of Dallas, and my buddy Wolfpat was going to do like a little film piece on them, right? A little kind of documentary style interview with Barton. Yeah. And I was like, dude, if I could just kind of go and like meet him, like that guy's the GOAT, you know? So he let me come and like shoot behind the scenes content, just kind of be there. And he also used it, you know, in there. It wasn't just me just to be there. I was adding value. And I heard him say this, man, it was really impactful. The quote, just kind of talking about his journey. I was like, man, how did you get from like never doing 3D to now you're like one of the top dogs in the game, working with the biggest names, doing high level production. And so what he compared it to was, I think he's like 13 years in the 3D game now. And he was really just doing like graphic and design work for his church, video work for his church. He got into motion graphics, you know, like a lot of people do, thought that was really cool. And then he started seeing, you know, 3D get used. And he was like, man, I feel like I could potentially do that, right? So and then he talks about his peers, right? He's like, you know, all my friends were graphics people and design people. We all really have the same skill set, right? You could kind of go to any one of us. We can all do logos. We can all do websites. We can all do kind of the same skill sets. He goes, but with 3D, I really felt like it was the new frontier, and it was going to be this thing that if I could get into it, would really pay off if I could master it. So he goes down that path. He ends up, you know, 13 years later now, and he looks back at that moment and looks back at those people that he was surrounded by, his peers doing the same exact services, and they're all still doing those same exact services. He is now doing this thing that is very rare from a skill set standpoint to have, has a huge office, you know, tons of employees, you know, awesome team members all around the world that are helping create all these productions. And what he said to me was, you know, think about it, man. If you have a service that you can offer that other people can't, and you can also do the same stuff all those other people can do, why would a client not come to you when you clearly have a higher level of expertise because you're doing something that everybody else can't, while also being able to do all of the other things everybody can? And it just made complete sense to me.
So in a way, you're actually, that you just made a great case for being a polymath, jack of all trades type of thing. Yeah.
Right. But to that, it's not something that he could just like, the amount of time, energy, and effort, especially with 3D, right, or any of these things, to be able to get to the level where Nike, you know, have you seen that billboard? I think it's in Tokyo, and it's a 3D one, and it looks like stuff jumps out. It's like their Times Square area.
Yeah.
He's done Nike campaigns on that thing for entire shoe releases, where it's that whole, you know, 3D effect. That's like that's one of like the most epic places you could have your content displayed. Forget that. Just the brands that he's getting to work with, you don't get to that level by just being okay and kind of good at a thing. You have to be like the absolute best. You got to be the Navy SEAL, you know, version of it that is always going to deliver at the highest levels. And the amount of time it takes to really get there, especially in a medium or a skill set like that, he's talking 13 years of like grinding it out. Prior to that, he already became the expert at making logos, the expert at doing graphics for, you know, his church, PowerPoints, like, you know, brochures, 2D graphics, and then motion graphics, right? Like it was an evolution, but all of those things required him to kind of be good at this to then move on to, okay, I'm really good at like static imagery with graphics. How can I make these things move? Yeah. Okay, well, let me learn keyframing and like tweening, and I can make this object move over here. All right, what's the elevated version of that? Well, it's just that stair-step approach to the point when, okay, I've mastered 2D motion graphics. What's next? Well, 3D. That's a whole different program. That's a whole different mindset. That's a whole different way you have to even approach a project. And to master that took a lot of time, and so it was really cool to kind of hear that, but it made complete sense, man. You can do the same thing everyone else can do, but you can also do something that nobody else can do, that none of those people can do. If I'm the client, why would I go to those people?
Yeah.
This guy seems like way
One-stop
more of
shop.
an expert. That's the Navy SEAL versus like the infantry guy in the Army,
Yeah.
right? Infantry guy is super valuable at being an infantry guy, but the Navy SEAL guy can be the infantry guy. He can go fly the helicopter. He can jump out of the plane. He can, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so that really struck a chord with me. And I always tell my buddy Wolfpat, I'm like, dude, when Barton said that, man, like, I always go back to that statement. Like I said, I don't know Barton like that. I just got to meet him the one time, and occasionally we go back and forth on Instagram. But that is a really valuable way to think, in my opinion, because you want to set yourself apart. How can you separate yourself from everybody else? Like, you kind of think of like those sites on Fiverr, or those like Fiverr, or Upwork. There can be great opportunity that comes through that. We were talking about an awesome opportunity for you that came through that. But think if you're like a client, right?
Yeah.
And you go on there and you type in logo design, 10,000 options pop up of people that are logo designers,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of it looks the same. They can all kind of do it. And you're then just sitting there going, okay, what's the cheapest version of that, right? Versus...
Which is not how you should think about your company logo. But yes, people do think about that.
Right, because of budgets and constraints,
Yeah.
right? And all that. But, okay, cool. I can go to that guy. But what about the guy that can do the 3D version of that logo and do it in a way that Nike wants to pay
Add
for it,
emotion
or
to
whoever
it,
wants to pay for it? And at the highest of highest levels, right? And if you have the budget for it, why would you not go with that top dog, right? And so I think it was a really good lesson, and I already knew it, right? And I've applied that in different areas, but just to hear it again reinforced in that kind of way was an awesome little... Okay, I'm going to write that down real quick, and keep applying that.
You said beatbox is one of your favorites.
Yeah.
I want to hear who's your favorite client that you've ever gotten.
Man, I've gotten to work with so many people, man. I've done, in so many different skill sets I've gotten to use. It's not all just media production or consulting. Like, I got to do a little bit of like talent acquisition for Red Bull for an event, where they needed celebrity judges, and I just happened to, know the guy putting on the event, and for Red Bull is one of their big events that they do in Dallas, like 50, 60,000 people in attendance. I can't remember the name of it. He's gonna be mad at me, but it's where you build your own kind of custom car. Okay. And you go down the hill, and it's like a race.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Man, they're gonna hate me because I can't remember the name. But
it's like every Thanksgiving or something like that.
So for that event,
Philly.
I had the celebrity judges there. I had, athletes. I had the national anthem singer who was an American Idol contestant, pretty well known, on the show in the area. Different, radio personalities that were really big. That stuff's cool to me. I love, doing something like that, right? I've gotten to work with, coming out the gate with those retainers. When I jumped ship, I had a guy named Delino DeShields, Texas Rangers center fielder. I'm managing him with marketing opportunities on and off the field.
When you say managing his marketing opportunities, what do you mean by that?
Everything from social media to content creation for the social media, brand deals, opportunities with the team that he played for at the time. When he went to Cleveland, he got traded to Cleveland, put together the whole campaign for, hey, let's make a splash. Let's not let this be a trade where, cool, he got traded. Let's show up to Cleveland. Almost treated it like a new single for
the Beckhams have arrived kind of thing.
I hit up all the local radio stations. I got with the Cleveland Indians. What are resources we can tap into? We created a couple events that allowed fans to come hang out with him, youth baseball players to come to a workout of his while we were there, creating like a big splash, right? On like, hey, dude got traded here, and we're going to show you how excited he is to be here in your city by all these things he's participating in. And, I had him at the Cleveland Cavaliers game, got with the Cavs to make sure he would end up on the screen. Hey, Delino DeShields, in a timeout, on camera, newest player of the Indians kind of thing. Now 20,000 people in the arena are exposed to the new baseball player in the city, right? Stuff like that.
And when you approached him, like how did that look?
He approached me.
He approached you.
Yeah,
okay.
he called me. I already had a relationship. At the time, I was really cool with like most of the team, like the Texas Rangers players. And so I already had a relationship with him, and it was, he ended up calling me and just saying, hey man, I know what you do. And we were kind of had a friendship, already at that point. I feel like I have not, leveraged, my platform from a marketing perspective in the way that I would like to. I've really focused on my on-field play more than anything and kept that as like the most important thing. But I'm realizing like there's other opportunities I can take advantage of. I feel like, you're the best person to help me do that.
Yeah.
You know, so that was a cool situation where through proximity, I'm not even soliciting him. He just sees how I move and what I do and what I accomplish in other areas. He goes, I think that guy would be good to help me do that. If he can do that in those situations, why couldn't he do that for me?
Yeah.
Right. So it's real tough for me to pick a favorite, man. I've gotten to work with Maserati. I had them as a retainer client for, 2 years, and it was a corporate dealership. So it's not like I'm working with, Maserati headquarters, but I'm getting to work with a corporate dealership, which is one of, I think, like they had 17 of those at the time.
Still, though, I mean, for a lot of people, that would be an incredible retainer. Do you have a method for how do you reach out to clients, or how is it normally referral, or how does it normally go for you?
Yeah, man, I'm really blessed in the sense that I believe that off of the reputation I built over the 13 years or so at that company, not just doing, work with our brands, right?
Yeah.
But we also got to work with, brands like Playboy, WWE.
Wow.
I was able to do an official Playboy photo shoot, creative director that Hugh Hefner signed off on.
And I guess because of this job, you're putting faces and names, like you're literally going face to face with these people.
Oh,
and all
yeah,
of that.
yeah, I have to. I mean, and that's the only way you get that stuff done, I believe. One thing I always say, especially like in consulting, from a marketing perspective, a lot of people are like, hey, what's the strategy to get the most people to see this? And it's like, well, it's cool to get the most people to see it, pay for ad spend, or go get a billboard, put a billboard up. And I always use the billboard example. I would rather take the time, energy, and effort that it requires to talk to 1 million people, right? I'd say 1 million, right? Face to face, one-on-one, in that intimate interaction, to tell them about the brand, give them a reference point for the brand, than I would put up a billboard, pay to have a billboard go up that 1 million people are going to drive by in one weekend, right? Why? A lot of people are going to drive by that, never see it. They might look at it. It means nothing to them unless it was the perfect messaging, the perfect
If anything,
picture.
it's in front of the sunset.
Right. And there is value there, but there's more value there for like big brands that are already established. You see the Bud Light, billboard kinda, or something like that. Yeah. These are already household names, and there's already a fan base behind it. It's going to go, oh, look at the thing I like up there on that billboard. You're new. Nobody knows about you. The best way for them to know about you is to get to experience it through you, the person from the brand, right? So it would take way longer for you to talk to 1 million people, more effort, more energy, but those one-on-one interactions have way more value. Think about it like this. If you were like, you had a brand, right? And you sold a product like a hat or shirts, and someone's a fan of that brand, right? You're a small brand, but maybe you have some fans already. And they get to meet you, right? And you hook them up with something like, hey, dude, here's a free shirt. Here's a free hat. It was great to meet you, that kind of thing. They get to talk to you. It's the Justin Bieber meet and greet, right? And take it down on like the Justin Bieber hasn't been discovered yet, but like there's a couple thousand people that know about him, right? And those are still fans, right? And it's the early on phase that they get to have that interaction. That person is going to go like, dude, I met that brand I've been following, or I've been talking about, or I started wearing their shirts or their hats. I actually got to meet the guy that, is with the brand. He's helped, create it, or he started it, or whatever the situation is. Or I got to meet the artist, right? That is the up and coming thing developing. Think about it in the comedy space. You've seen it where these guys hang out afterwards and meet the fans, right? And not all these guys, like if they're on Kill Tony or something like that, they might not be big yet, right? But they're fans of Kill Tony. They're at the Kill Tony experience, right? Or they watch it and the guy just traveled to their city to open up for Hans, or, maybe they get to headline a show, right? But they're still not big yet, right? In terms of like the grand scale. They get to meet him after the show, and the comedian gives him a sticker, right? Yeah. Now that guy, the fan, is going to go back. That girl is going to go back. Word of mouth advertising comes from that. They're going to go tell their friends like, dude, that comedian I've been telling you about, and I've been sending you all his clips from Instagram or TikTok, and I went to his show. Dude, I got to meet him. I got a picture with him. I got a sticker. He talked to me. I told him my favorite, whatever. Now you've created an experience, right? And that's what is called experiential marketing, right? Creating an experience where there's an interaction and an exchange between the brand and the person, that the follower, the fan, the audience, whatever you want to call them, right? Yeah. So that to me is way more powerful than if you put a billboard up. Hans does a great job of that. You know, David, Cam, all these guys, they will shake every hand after a show, take every photo. If it's 150, 200 people, whatever it is, that's a lot of energy to give out after you just did an hour set.
I mean, presidential candidates do it literally. So I mean, it makes sense.
Shaking hands, kissing babies, right?
Right, exactly.
But then all those people are going to go back. Do they tell one person? Do they post that photo up of Hans and they have a 500 followers that actually know them, or 100 followers that actually are friends of theirs, right? Do they go to work the next day and say, dude, I had the craziest time last night, man. I got to meet my favorite comedian, and show the guy the picture, or wear the shirt to work the next day, or whatever. They're going to talk about it with people. That is way more valuable than throwing up some, advertising dollars to get. People are always talking about views, right? Views is like, dude, I drove here from Dallas today. You know how many billboards I passed? I couldn't tell you one of them. Because I'm not paying attention. Yeah. I know I saw them.
Yeah, I mean, I think though, well, I don't want to get into it too much, but the big thing is like the rule of sevens, where it's like, you want someone to, on average, they're going to have to view your product or service 7 times before they consider it. You need them to know, like, and trust, that type of thing.
Right.
Like I said, marketing is biology.
Oh,
it's fucking huge.
Yeah.
But 99% of the people that heard this have never heard what.
Sure. But think about like the rule of 7, right? I've actually seen it before where they said it's between 7 and 20 times.
Sure.
It's like this
I've
range,
heard that too.
right?
I've heard that too.
So, but what if all 7 of those, or the majority of those, had some kind of experiential component versus driving by a billboard 7 times? You still don't have a connection to that billboard.
That's right.
But you can connect to people. People connect to people, right?
Yeah.
And when people are representative of a brand, right? And you get to connect with the representative of the brand, people are connecting with people.
Yeah.
And that experience has a lot more impact and weight on the potential fan or customer. So think of rule of sevens, if it happened in that way, right? Versus I drove by a billboard 7 times of something I've never heard of before. I saw it, I'm aware of it, but I've got no connection to it. At the end of the day, dude, you're trying to get people to spend their hard-earned dollar, right?
Yeah.
Like they're trying to pay bills, whatever excess money they have, that's what these people are trying to grab, right?
Yeah.
Like once they've paid off everything and their obligations are met, how can we get that dollar, right? And some people don't care. They throw their money away. A lot of people are trying to keep the money, right? And if I'm going to buy something, I want to know and be confident in it that it's still going to have value beyond the moment I buy it, right? Well, I guess I'll finish this topic with this as just another example, and I keep going back to, the fashion world, right? But let's just say, your kid, right? Like my favorite store was Zoomies in the mall, right? And let's just say your favorite store is Zoomies. You go in there every month. Parents give you money to go get some new clothes, but you probably have your favorite brand, right? You probably have your favorite, maybe it's DC shoes or something like that, right? And you love the DC shirts, right? Or Famous Stars and Straps at the time from Travis Barker was huge, right? I love Famous Stars and Straps at the time. I was a fan of the brand. I would buy those shirts. Well, when I would buy those shirts, after a while, I already knew the fit, right? So I didn't have to try anything on. I would just go in and I already knew, like most people, I'm going into this store because they carry this thing that I want.
Yes.
Right? I go in there, I see the Famous Stars and Straps section. Well, right next to Famous Stars and Straps is, Rob Dyrdek was with a brand called Rogue Status. It was the one with like all the machine guns and stuff, like print pattern on it that he was wearing on Robin Big at the time, or like Young and Reckless, right? And now you see that. Well, you don't know anything about that yet because it's brand new. They just showed up in your favorite store. So there is some credibility, right? Because it's in the store that you shop in and it's next to the brand that you always purchase, right? But what is it going to take for you to go, hey, instead of spending my money on the thing I came in for already and the brand I'm already a huge fan of, what's it going to take for that customer to shift and go, all right, I'll buy that instead? Well, it's a couple things. Consistency, back to rules of 7, or that concept. It's going to take them a few times of going in there to see it still on the shelf, right? I don't want to buy it the first time I see it because I don't really know, and it's a subconscious thing a lot of times, is this going to be cool 6 months from now? Is my hard-earned dollar that I'm spending on this, I already know Famous Stars and Straps has been in here for years. Yeah. They're not going anywhere. Young and Reckless, whatever it is, they've been here for years. But this new brand, it looks cool. I like it, but I don't necessarily have the confidence to go, all right, let me get it. Because what if 2 months from now, 3 months from now, it flops and it's not in the store anymore. And now it's not even cool to like wear that, right? Now I'm looking at it like I just wasted my money when I've been wearing these stars, famous stars and straps, shirts for years now as well. And it's still cool, still relevant. And I have no doubt that that's going to be there next month when I come back in with the new designs and the new order, right? So it's that consistency. But you get to that 6-month mark, it's still there. Okay, I might be willing to try it. You get it, you like the fit. Now you've got a reference point. You've been to Trader Joe's?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the sample station in Trader Joe's? So that's one of my favorite examples on this. The Trader Joe's sample station is a beautiful example of business and giving people reference points. People base everything they do off of their current reference point. I would go into Trader Joe's and most people have a grocery list, right? I need to get these items. Why? Because I know I like them and I'm going to eat them. They're not going to go to waste, and it's things I enjoy, right? I need it for the recipe for this meal that I love, right? Well, you see other things on the shelf and you're like, that might be cool. That might be good. Well, the Trader Joe's sample station is the best thing that they ever did, right? They're giving away free food. They're giving away free product every single day. The whole purpose of it, they have like 2 or 3 different items they're testing out that day. They got a person back there that is preparing it and putting it out there and talking you through like, so we have this thing called cookie butter. And, it's one of my favorite things. And I like to do it like this. I like to put cookie butter on, this cracker or this thing. You should try it. No strings attached, right? There's no risk. My dollar's not getting spent, but now I'm trying something new, right? And they try it, you try the cookie butter or whatever the product is, and you love it. Yeah. And then you're sitting there going, man, that's good. You want another one? Here's another free one, right? And you're in conversation with them.
I could go for the cookie butter.
Right, anyway. Exactly. Now you're in conversation with them, but you're enjoying it. And now you have the reference point that you love it and you want to get that product. Hey, where can I get this? What aisle? Usually they have it right there in front of you, so you don't have to go find it, right? But we got it right here, but normally it's on aisle 4 next to this. Yeah. Why does Trader Joe's do that? It's not because they want to give away free food. That costs them money to do that. It's not a bunch, but it costs them money every time they give something away. It's because they understand that if we give people a reference point for an item that they normally wouldn't purchase and they like it, well, now they might become a customer of that product. And not just one time. If they buy it once and they like it, there's a good chance they now are a repeat customer. And what's the best customer you could have in any business? A repeat customer. Repeat customers are the easiest and the best to work with because they keep coming back for more. You don't have to build the rapport again. You don't have to build the relationship again like you do with a brand new customer that you're working with for the first time, right? So now they're generating incremental sales. They're making more money from you because now you've just added a new item to your list that you never would have purchased before, and their bottom line revenue is going up.
Dude, that's awesome. I actually want to, I kind of was hoping to organically maneuver to this, but I'm just going to go ahead and like directly cut to this because this is Talk Shop. And the whole point of this is to give people like as clear of a directive as possible. Right. And when we hung out, you said you dropped some like Talk Shop. A lot of what we've been talking about is also shop, but I always like to the original expression that I made. So I like to say amateurs talk shit, professionals talk shop. Yeah. The original expression comes from. Thank you. The original expression that it is diluted down to is lieutenants talk tactics, generals talk logistics. And so that's kind of the idea.
Say that one more time? Say it one more time.
Well, here, I'll say it. The other one, what it watered down to is amateurs talk tactics, professionals talk logistics. Right. Which I then converted into amateurs talk shit, professionals talk shop. One of the things that you gave me that was just like hard logistics was you started talking about, what do we got here? What's going on here? I fucked something up. Thank you. You started talking about shooting real estate. Oh, yeah. And how you went about doing that. Yeah. Would you mind talking about that?
Yeah. So I think the thing that you were really digging in that conversation was you can approach any of these categories of business in multiple ways, right? So in real estate, we'll just obviously using that example, you're doing real estate photography or you're doing videography for a real estate agent, right? When we talk about real estate agents, there's levels to real estate agents. You have real estate agents that sell on average, all they deal with is, lower cost homes, like $150,000 to $200,000, $300,000 homes, right? Not talking trash about the home. It's just there's also $3 million homes, $5 million homes, and there's real estate agents that specialize in that. We call that luxury real estate, right? You got starter homes and you got mansions. Like there's everything in between that. Well, with real estate agents, the way that this happens for them, they are in charge of their own marketing when it comes to, hey, they get a listing, they have someone that wants them to sell their house. They have to, and one of the selling points that real estate agents put out there is, look how good and how well I'm able to market your home. When I sell your home and you let me list it, this is what I do to make sure it gets sold, right? But that budget comes out of their own pocket, whether that house sells or doesn't sell, right? So let's just say a real estate agent selling a $500,000 home, like let's real quick just kind of pull up the calculator and do some quick math.
This is what I'm talking about when I say talk shop.
Yeah. So if we do some quick math, let's do $1 million, and we'll do two examples. We'll do $1 million home and we'll do a $100,000 home, just to kind of show, easy numbers, but two ends of the spectrum, right? So let's do the $1 million home. So $1 million home, and real estate agents, if I'm getting some of these details slightly off, forgive me, but this is pretty accurate. So real estate agents work for a broker. Right? The broker is the one that holds their real estate license, that allows them to actually sell properties, right? But you have to have a broker that holds that license. The broker provides a lot of infrastructure for the real estate agent. So you're not really an employee of them. They just hold your license. You're a 1099, most of the time you're a 1099 employee of them, but it's really not an employee situation. You don't even have to show up to the office half the time. It's not like you're going to a 9 to 5. You are working based on getting your own work, your own listings, marketing yourself to homeowners that will let you sell their house. A lot of that comes through word of mouth. Hey, so-and-so sold my home. They did a really good job. You should use them too when selling your house, right? That's a lot of how that works. But the broker, the infrastructure they provide is like a lot of formalities beyond just holding your license. It's like, hey, you can come to our office and use our conference room. You can use our different resources we have at your disposal, right? Different brokers will charge different commission fees. So realtors, when they sell a house, the way that they are actually making money is they're getting a commission or a percentage of the sale, right? What that usually breaks down to is a 6% commission, right? So that 6% commission typically, just for simple math, gets split in half. 3% goes to the agent that's doing all of the work. The other 3% is kind of like the sitting fee, if you will, like we were talking about earlier for the broker, that they're going to get every time you sell a house, whether it's a $100,000 house or it's a $1 million house, right? So your commission is relative to the price of the home in which it is sold at. So let's just take the $1 million home. If you take $1 million, you multiply it by 6%, you get $60,000. That $60,000, because we got to divide that 6% in half, that realtor is going to keep $30,000. The broker is going to get $30,000. That's how the money gets made. Well, because the realtor, not the broker, is responsible for the marketing of that house to get it sold, like on $1 million property or like the higher end luxury stuff, they want to go all out, right? They not just to sell it, but to also now have in their portfolio when they go to the next homeowner that has $1 million plus house. Here is the type of video we do. Here's the level of photography we do. So you have some realtors on the lower end, they will go in with their iPhone and shoot the real estate photos for the listing, right? Cool. That might work for them in that. You try to go get $1 million listing from a homeowner that has $1 million property. They're probably pretty wealthy if they have that property. And you say, hey, I come in with my iPhone and I shoot photos. That's not going to fly. You're never going to get that job, right? Well, because those marketing dollars come out of their pocket, they're looking at, if we sell this house and we do it the right way and the listing sells, I'm going to get $30,000. So you got to look at that $30,000 as potential budget for you to use in marketing that house to get it sold. So if they got to spend $5,000 on marketing, which isn't just your photos or videos, they're putting out flyers or mailers. They're sending mailers to, lists that are potential buyers. They're sending out email blast campaigns. They're sending out social media ads. Some of them are doing SEO. Like there's levels to it with that, but all that adds up, right? It's not just what you're offering. Maybe they're willing to go, well, I could spend $10,000 on marketing this house at the highest level possible. There's these luxury real estate magazines, I forget what they're called, maybe like Home and Luxury or, but where it is all just elite home listings that wealthy people get sent to them, and they're looking at the home and they're like, oh, I like that home. That's in my price range. It's a $2 million home. That's a way of marketing, right? But let's just say it's $5,000, $10,000 you're spending. Cool, I'm still making 20, 25 grand when I sell this home. I don't really have to sweat that 5 or 10K that I use to get that sold, right? It then benefits them for the next sale as well because they have that in their portfolio. Let's take the same situation for the $100,000 guy, right? We do the 6% on $100,000.
So it's like $600.
$6,000.
Oh, $6,000 for
from a $100,000 home.
Yeah.
$6,000. Now they have $6,000 that is potential profit, but they still have to market the house. You cannot charge. I mean, the guy would be dumb. It would not be a good business move if you charge that realtor, try to charge him like, hey, I charge, $3,000 or $5,000 to come in and do photos and video for your sale. He's looking at that like, dude, you just ate up half of my profit.
Right.
And that's before taxes. And that's before I've even paid for any of the other marketing expenses that I got to pay for to sell this house. And what if the house doesn't sell? You're still getting paid for the services you provide them. They're not. The house doesn't sell. They don't get the commission. Now they're in the hole, right? They didn't get any money. They lost money on trying to sell this house. So talking about reverse engineering, you want to make a lot of money doing, and when it comes to photo and video and real estate, I only try to operate in the luxury space. It's not like the main thing that I do, but I look at it as like relatively easy money. I'm not dealing with people. I'm dealing with a house, an inanimate object that I got to make look good. I can go in there, do my thing. There's not a lot of, stuff to mess with, right? There's still a skill set to do it at a high level, but I want to go out, let's reverse engineer it. You want to get paid a lot of money doing real estate photo and video. You need to figure out a way to get to the luxury real estate agent because they're the ones that are going to even have the budget to pay you a lot of money to do that thing versus like the low end guy, the guy making $6,000 commission, which he's not even making. He's making $3,000 because he has to split that, right? So now he's down to 3K. You can't go in and charge him $3,000 for photos and videos. You just ate up all his money, even if he does sell it, right? So there's guys that do, and volume is a great thing, but there's guys that will do $500, deals. I just need $500. I'll do photo and video. I don't care what the house is. It's still a lot. It's almost the same effort every time, right? But $500 versus $5,000 on the same job is two different things. So to reverse engineer that, I want to make a lot of money in real estate photography and video. How do I get to the luxury guy who's selling $1 million, $5 million homes, who has a lot more budget to play with if he sells the home, who a $5,000 photo and video shoot is nothing to him in the grand scheme of things. He still made $30,000, $25,000 on the higher end homes. Like some of these guys are getting $60,000 after they've split it with the broker, on a single sale. So you really have to get strategic in your approach on, if I want to make a certain type of money, I also have to work with the person that can actually afford that level of spend.
Yeah.
If you're advertising to people this high amount, I don't care if it's real estate or anything else that doesn't have the budget to facilitate it, you're spinning your wheels, right? And again, nothing wrong with the $500 photo shoot or video shoot. That's great, especially if you're doing it at a volume and you're cranking them out quick and you got your little system in play. But if you want to grow, right? Because it's all time and time is money, right? So how much is my time worth? Well, if you say your time is worth $300 an hour, you have to work with people that can afford $300 an hour. And to them, a lot of times when they're at that level, they don't think twice. You've probably seen it before. I found it to be very true. The people that are willing to just cut the check, you send them the quote and it's some large amount of money and they don't even blink. A lot of times they're the least involved with the project.
It's
they
amazing.
Don't complain. There's
That's
no
what
tweaks.
they always
There's
tell
nothing.
you. It's like
yeah.
the less they pay, the more they treat you like shit,
Yes.
dude. It's insane, dude.
But
That's
does that make
that's
sense,
the
though?
biggest reason. Yeah.
In terms of how to get, it's the same exact industry. It's the same exact service.
Well, but specifically the logistics. what did you do? You were telling me something about how you used Fiverr or Upwork to find all of these listings.
Yeah, so a lot of it was word of mouth still. Like that's what you asked earlier. I don't have a website. I don't have a business card. I feel like my reputation, I get a lot of word of mouth. But I had this idea when I started working with some luxury real estate guys, was like, okay, how can I get to more of these people and speed up the process? Well, you go on Fiverr. Here's a reason I love Fiverr. You've got data entry people that will just copy and paste information into a spreadsheet for you, right? For nothing, very little money. I went and found one of those guys. I just found, data entry, basically typed in data entry on Fiverr. And I had already kind of tried this process on my own before trying to get a guy on Fiverr to do it just to make sure it worked. But let's just say you go to Zillow.com, you go to Redfin, any of them, it's all the same. You can go into Zillow, unless you're pretending like you're searching for a home, and you go through the filtering process and say, I only want to look at homes between $750,000 and $10 million, or whatever the max they'll let you do, right? Well, now you're only going to get, in the search results, homes that are luxury homes. What is on all of those listing pages by requirement, like legally to be on there? The broker and the realtor name. The realtor is going to have their contact information. So you're going to get their name, their phone number, and their email. Well, when you do that, depending on where you live or where you're searching, right, the city, there might be 1,000 options that pop up, right? And there's also going to be a lot of repeats. You're going to have, like, the guys that sell luxury get a lot of business, and they're selling a lot of the different listings in that area. So I just decided, okay, it's going to take me way too much time to do this on my own. My time is more valuable in the actual creative process. So I went on Fiverr, typed in data entry, found a guy. I literally screen recorded the process of me doing it. Okay, here's what I need you to do. Go on Zillow, set the filters this way. I now need you to go through every single listing, copy and paste the first and last name of the realtor, the email address, the phone number, the address of the listing, all of that info, and put it in a spreadsheet for me. I now have a spreadsheet. The guy gets back to me in not even like a day and a half. I've got a list populated with 100-something plus luxury real estate agents in my local area, which means that I can get that business right now. I don't have to travel anywhere. It's in my backyard, and it's all right here. So now all I got to do is start reaching out to them.
Yeah.
I also had them.
And I'm guessing, did you do this before ChatGPT?
Oh.
So now it would be even easier because
exactly.
This is something I've been doing is I just bounce everything off of ChatGPT,
exactly.
even if I'm like, is this stupid or whatever? I just, all my emails, I recheck through them, everything like that.
Yes.
But now you can take that same process, have the email formatted through ChatGPT, copy, paste, you're good to go.
Let's just say I got 100 of those people and I reach out to all of them and I only get 10 to respond, right?
That's $50,000.
Every time I work with one of those people, and then that if I do great the way I know I'm going to, they're going to keep hiring me, keep bringing me back. But instead of trying to like tell everybody, hey, I do real estate work, why don't you just fish in the waters that have the fish that you want to catch?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that for me was an example of a way to expedite the process, get to the people I want to get to. You're not going to get in contact with all of them, but you at least have the information. And if you just hit 10% of that, 5% of that, those are all repeat. They get new listings every month.
Yeah.
And if you do great, they're going to keep coming back. And now you are making more money for less of your time as long as you have the quality and level of product to deliver that meets their expectation.
That's amazing, dude. That's pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. In fact, I'm wondering, do you have any more like specific logistical hacks that you have accumulated over the course of, what is this, like 2 decades or close to 2 decades of doing this kind of stuff? Is there anything similar to that might be like a little thing that you figured out?
Man, I'm sure there is.
That's okay.
Off the top, it's the cool thing about experience, man, is like when you get these reference
like to call
points,
it like you're building a decision tree.
Yeah. Once you get these reference points and experiences, a lot of times those little things that you're doing, you're not even thinking about them when you're doing it. It kind of becomes just as like the subconscious thing. It becomes the little leaves on the branches that are reaching out further and further. It's the old saying, work smarter, not harder.
That's right.
Like how can you do the same thing in a way that's more efficient, where your time is better served elsewhere?
That's right.
And where your time commands more value.
Yeah.
Right. Because I could do that data entry, right? I'm not making any money when I'm doing that data entry. There's future money I can make off of it, but I could be shooting. I could be calling up a client. I could be having the social interaction that's going to get me a big fish in some other area, right? While someone else that's what they do and they love doing it and that's what they're advertising their service as. Let me tap into you. I think that cost me like $50 to do that. And the guy's working for like a day and a half. He set the rate, not me.
Yeah.
You know, and cool, you got what you wanted. I got what I wanted out of it. And my time was better served, you know, at the end of the day. And I think that's the biggest thing people can learn, man, is how can you do what you're doing quicker, faster, with more efficiency. Toyota, I think, came up with this system. It's called the Kaizen system. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's continuous improvement. It's the idea of how can I continuously improve the process to make it more efficient, to make it better, and to where you get to where it is the most efficient version of that process, right? How can I, if it's a manufacturing line, how can we move things around the manufacturing line in a way that lets us get the finished product out the door quicker, right? To the customer quicker so that they can sell it, the store can sell it, and then they're hitting us back for a reorder quicker, right? Which means we're generating more money, you know, in that example. But how can you be more efficient in what you do? And a lot of that is letting go of control, delegating, right? And being comfortable with not participating in part of the process. You know, it's tough to let go of part of the process because, well, I'm the only one that's ever been doing it. So if I give it to somebody else, what if they don't do it as good as me? Well, you can probably come in and fix it. It's going to then take more of your time, but what if they do it perfectly?
Yeah.
And now it's more efficient. Now you have a person in the mix, like maybe that's hiring an editor. Maybe that's hiring a colorist. Maybe that's hiring, I mean, that's why movies, right? Films, they have departments for each specific thing. We got our lighting team. We have our, you know, the director, we got the DPs, we got all these things. Because could one person do that? Yeah, but it would take forever.
Yeah.
And things would fall through the cracks, right? So being able to let go while also identifying the right people to let it go to, right? That's part of the management process. Those are going to be the things that allow you to be more efficient. Naturally, if you're more efficient, you're making more money. You're making more money. I think you're probably happier in life because seems, I mean, who knows? Maybe you're not, but you know, this is not for you.
Should do a real quick camera check. There's one other couple, like two other little things I just want to do real quick, but let me just do a quick camera check. I don't know why I'm speaking into that.
It's cool. Now you know when you listen back that, you know, we're camera checking. Was that what you were wanting on the real estate thing?
That's exactly what I was looking for. Okay. Sometimes I will hear people that want to go full time into photography or video say things, and I'm blanking on one right now. But sometimes I just want to grab them and shake them and tell them something. I'm curious, what is that thing for you that you've heard people in passing, that you've heard amateurs or people that want to go? What's that thing that you've heard that you just like, please don't do this or whatever?
So it's not specific to photo or video. It's just the idea of like doing your own thing, jumping ship from your 9 to 5. I always hear people say this to me, because especially like if I know them and they're coming to me like they knew I did that, right? My favorite thing is, yeah, man, I'm just so excited for, when I make this jump, because I'm just going to be in control of my schedule and have so much more time. And I'm going to be able to really, create my own schedule. And they have this idea in their mind that once I'm working for myself, I'm the boss and I'm in control of my day and my time. And it's like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. You're about to be working way more and way harder than you've ever worked, because you are the end all be all. Yeah. And there is no fail safe and there is no team behind you until you get to that point with a team behind you. And I always say to them, like, man, I know it feels like that and seems like that, but watch what happens. And every time they come back to me and they're like, dude, you were right. Like, I'm working, I left a job, I was working 8 hours a day. I'm working 16-hour days, 18-hour days now, because something goes wrong. Guess who's fixing it? You. Unless you don't want to deliver it and meet the expectation you set.
Yeah.
I guess one of those little tips I would also say, man, just not to backtrack to that moment, but expectation setting with people is huge.
Yes.
Huge. If you can master the art of setting expectations and then meeting, but hopefully exceeding, that is where you're going to win. You lose, and that word of mouth works against you the second you start setting expectations that you either know you can't meet or for whatever reason you didn't.
Yeah.
All that client or customer is going to know is that I hired them to do something and they didn't do it in the way that they sold me on.
Yeah.
And that's that'll either work for you or against you. And so always meet the expectation.
I'm going to pile on top of that. I worked at the Apple Store for 10 years and I absolutely hated it. I cannot understate the level of contempt I had for working at the Apple Store and the Apple Store in general. But one thing that drives me nuts is I got to give them credit for the things that they instilled in me, which is 10 years of that actually gave me a lot of advantages when dealing with clients, because you are drilling the fundamentals for nonstop. And one of the biggest ones is setting clear expectations. Yeah. Every single client, I put in a contract, and at the very top is the scope of work. I verbally tell them that, and I put it at the top, and I say, make sure. And of course, they signed it. They signed the contract that says explicitly, this is what I'm going to deliver. This is what the timeline is, that type of thing. I tried to over communicate. I tried to, tell them, do you have a reference video, that sort of thing, for what we can meet. It's just like anything else where they say, like, fix it in pre, don't do it post.
Oh, yeah.
When you are not communicating,
just Photoshop it.
Yeah, when you are not communicating up before them, you are trying to fix it in post. Yeah. You are basically trying to hope that you can fix it later.
You're freestyling.
Over communicate to the point of it being maybe a little bit uncomfortable or whatever, but it's a better problem to have than it is to later go, oh, I thought you were going to do this, that type of thing.
Man, yeah, 100%. So not to go back to that, but that's a big one there.
It is a big one. It's probably the biggest one. Communication is key.
And when you can exceed the expectation, you just win a whole, that's like, hitting a home run is cool, right? Hitting the walk-off grand slam is even better.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, that's what I would say to that for sure.
Hell yeah. All right. Let's wrap this up.
Dude, thank you for having me on,
Dude,
man.
thank you for coming on. This is the inaugural episode. Did I say that correctly? I think I did.
Inaugural episode.
This is a big one. You've set the precedent.
I don't know, man. I think you're going to have some people on here that come in and just demolish this.
Well, there's different levels. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of it. I'm going to be going into different fields, and I'll probably be getting graphic designers. I'll be getting musicians. I'll probably be getting marketing managers. I'll probably be getting tour managers, whoever.
Yeah, one thing I think would be cool for you to have on here is, a lot of times we are shooting the talent.
Yes.
If you could get the talent on here,
I definitely want to do that.
I think the perspective of the talent would be great to hear some of the stuff I'm talking about treating them like people. Like, what is it that you like about the photographers and videographers that you hire and you work with? Understanding why they gravitate towards certain people, understanding like the interaction component from their perspective, I think would be a really cool thing, because, a lot of times it's just, you're kind of guessing, right? What about the person that you're trying to get to just telling you exactly what it is about the people they work with that they like within that industry? I think that could be a cool angle to take for sure.
That's what's up.
Yeah, that is what's up.
Dude, thank you so much.
Good.